Oh, she sounded pretty. You know, whenever I hear one of those, man, like lately in like a meditation room, when we do these group meditations, they'll turn off the lights, you know, in like a big room that we're in, and then they'll put it on like YouTube on this big fancy television. They'll close and they'll turn all the lights off, and I'll just take a couple chairs and lay back and just kind of close my eyes. But it's the gal's voice on there that really does it for me. It's not so much of the music in the background. She's like, breathe in, breathe out. And she'll go like this, in and out, deeper and deeper. And I'm like, whoa, I could go to sleep to that all night, baby. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
yeah.
Oh, bow chicka wow wow.
Well, you look good, man. It's good to have you back on here. A whole lot to cover with the, as long as we can talk this afternoon. You were asking me something off camera.
Yeah, I said, how's Angelina and the furry bunch doing?
We're all as good as we can be, man.
How
Um,
about your paw-in-law?
he's like I said, yeah, everything's going well. He's knee surgery's done, carpal tunnel surgery's done. He's
Is he
doing his
he's back
thing.
at his house?
He's been back, yeah, since January or something.
Gotcha.
hmm
Well, because I remembered that was man, it's like, wow, how long has it really been since I guess it's been
Our last
since,
our last call was in October, and you were in a bad way.
yeah, I
Um,
was.
it was not my favorite call we've ever had, but you had kind of lost hope. You had kind of found yourself in a tough spot. But I'm glad now, months later, and that's what we're here to discuss. If you hear
Yeah,
the if you hear the dogs barking, I've got my security team, one of the
uh,
four, right here next to me.
oh yeah,
Anyway,
Big Daddy. So it's funny that you mentioned that because I thought about it on the drive over here to this building that there's a big difference I'm finding in recovery now that the fog is lifting, as they say, and all that bull crap. That there's a big difference between surrendering and giving up. And back in October, from July 3rd until November 16th, I had given up. I was just kind of waiting to die. I really was. I mean, because I don't know if I shared this before, but anyway, I will if you would like to. It regards my son and my firearms. But long story short, and I can give you details on it if you like, that I had no way to even off myself at this point because my firearms were gone. I don't like pain, so there's no way I want to do something like cut myself or anything. And because of my drug of choice, I'm not going to say a person can't overdose on it. You can, I guess, but for the most part, it's unlike other illicit substances to where, if anything, if a guy, and I don't want to say lucky because I wouldn't be here, but if a guy really wanted to hurt himself, you'd be lucky to have a heart attack, a massive one that would kill you. Because other than that, you just do more damage and you just suffer, and the suffering continues. And from July 3rd until November 16th, I had given up at that point, just laying down, kind of waiting to die, because I didn't have a job. I didn't have health insurance. And the one entity that I thought would help me, the Veterans Administration, had mistreated me. So there's a big difference, I think, between giving up and surrendering. Surrendering, I think I did a long time ago, to be honest with you, Tim. I think it must have been late winter, early spring of 23, around February 20, about 2 years ago, roughly, that I had surrendered. I was like, okay, I got to get clean, man, because I've got some physical issues that are really ailing me. And at the advice of my therapist, which I got to give a shout out to Dan, he's my main man, that I love this dude. And what he said was, he said, Charlie, in order for the medical field to take you serious and treat you decent, you're going to have to be clean, man, for at least like 4 weeks. If you can give them 8 weeks, even better. So I told him in the winter, late fall, early winter of 22, I said, Dan, I've gotten some more product, which, I used to get it in a bulk, right? That I told him, I said, when this supply runs out, I don't intend to replenish it. Man, you would have thought I bought that dude a box of cheeseburgers or something, man, because he was so happy just to hear that I wanted to stop, I really did. So I told him that right around November of 22, and I ran out right around first part of February in 23. So I went about 3 months, I guess, and my batch ran out. I tried detoxing at home. That was very difficult because I couldn't get out of the damn recliner. If I did, just to do something as simple as throwing laundry in the goddamn washing machine or scrubbing my cast iron skillet, I would get so dizzy and out of breath where I'd have to go lay right back down. So, and being a man of integrity, I've always thought that that's one of my strengths anyway. I told my therapist, Dan, I said, Dan, I'm going back to see my guy, but I said, I'm not going to get a large amount. I'm just going to get enough to hold me over until I can get some help here at my home. And I think I shared this, but in case I haven't, for the listeners that don't know, was what happened in March of that year, towards the end of March, I guess, almost 2 years ago now, 2 years ago, actually, that I was in desperation, dude. I was just I was at a loss. Like, what do I really do? Because I still had health insurance, mind you. I was paying $680 a month for me through the Obamacare thing. So I'm paying that. I'm figuring I still have some money left in my IRA. And if it means taking some of that IRA and investing it in my health, it'll be worth it, right? That was my thought pattern. So I called my son's mother, Stacy, and I called her at work. She was still working on the clock, and she kind of has a busy job where she doesn't get phone breaks. But I was just sobbing uncontrollably, and I was just like, Stace, I said, I don't know what to do. And that day, after she got off of work, she came over to my place. Now, she hadn't been there in quite a time. She didn't, I mean, there was no reason to. She's got her own place, but she looked around as soon as she walked in the house and she goes, my God, she said, Charlie, I can't believe that you're living like this, because everything had gotten to the point where physically I was not able, due to strength, fatigue, cramps, and pain, to do my own goddamn housework, to keep things as she knew that I once did. I kept my house in ship-shape condition, clean, towels squared away, no cock hairs on the toilet or piss triplets. I mean, it was a nice place, man. That she asked me, she said, if I come stay with you, would that help you? And I said, Stace, that would be awesome. Just so I can stay clean long enough. Are you really willing to take this on? She said, yeah. So out of the kindness of her heart, she moved into my joint. And I told her, I said, just take my bedroom, because I hadn't laid down in 4 years in my own bed, and she camped out up there. But she got up every morning, drove 45, 60 minutes to work, did her factory job, drove back, went to her condo, which was like 2 miles from me as the crow flies, feed her cat and take care of her own shit, and then come home, feed me dinner, do my laundry, and help me out, man. And that did help me out. I was able to stay clean and just try to heal myself, you know. In that time frame, while I was abstinent, 6 weeks into my abstinence on a Saturday, Stacy had been out with her mother or something, and she came back, and I had been kind of flopping on the floor almost. I could barely open my phone. I had this sharp pain where I couldn't inflate my bags all the way, you know, my lungs. If I did, it hurt like a son of a bitch. So I had to do like this shallow breathing. I thought, what is this shit? Anyway, long story short, she pulled her car to the end of the driveway, and I practically kind of crawled out there almost. She opened up the back seat, and I just fell in there. And she's like, "Aren't you going to get buckled?" I said, "Woman, just drive. I can't breathe right." She took me to the hospital. They kept me, my first time ever in my life to stay overnight in a goddamn hospital. They kept me 7 days and 7 nights. What they found that was ailing me was something called pleurisy. I had never heard of it, but it's an infection on the outside of your lung between that and your meat, you know, your membrane or whatever. And even just, I guess, the smallest amount of this infection on the outside of your lung can can prevent your lung from inflating all the way. I didn't know that because it hurt like if I took a deep breath, like a knife stabbing in there. While I was in there, they saw that I had some other health issues. They ran some MRIs, found like a cyst on my liver, some other things. They did a ultrasound on my testicles, which it was kind of fun almost. I mean, the gal comes in, good looking little thing too, and she pulls her little buggy around and she picks up she picks up this big towel and says, "I'm going to lay this over your penis and sonogram your testicles." I said, "You don't need a towel that big, honey." And I was a little shortchanged at birth, you know. But they found a dense spot in my left nut. I have a dense, like a small cyst, I guess, and that's why it's larger than my right. That they found that they did a test result that said abnormal.
Looks like we just lost connection. I think you were saying abnormal, but everything just froze up.
Son of a bitch, buddy. Can you?
I got you.
How about
I
now?
got you now.
Okay. Yeah, like I'm next door to where the Wi-Fi is, so I'm doing this will probably be the best signal I can get. And what happened was they kept me 7 days and 7 nights because they had found other things that were, I guess you'd say, differential diagnoses. And when the infection got down enough where they thought I could go home, they kicked me loose. They had me wanting to follow up with all these like gastroenterologist, the pulmonary guy, all this other crap, and the neurologist, which I was going to do. But when I got home, Tim, I was gone that 1 week. When I got home, I already had letters in the mail from my insurance company, which was through Obamacare, that said, "We will not be paying your whole hospital bill." Basically, this is not verbatim. They just said, "We're not going to pay this because we can't justify 7 days and 7 nights due to pleurisy," right? Well, what they didn't realize was all the other complex shit they were trying to figure out. So I got billed. They paid, I think, for 4 out of those 7 days, right? I got billed just shy of 16,000, 15,890 bucks, right? And I'm thinking, I'm going to have to pay it because I had assets in my IRA. I own my home, right? I mean, they're going to get their money. But I turned to Dan once again. I said, Dan, help me out here. I've not made the best decisions, obviously, in the last few years. I said, would you keep paying 680 a month for an insurance company that's not going to pay your fucking bill? I mean, here I was trying to use my money of what I had to really get help, you know? So I canceled my insurance. 680 a month for the first 6 months of that year and just shy of 16,000 out of my own pocket. So I went without insurance. Come about the end of July, Stacy had been there a couple months, but man, I could tell she was running herself ragged, buddy. Because the only 2 days that she had off was Saturday and Sunday. She worked one of those days taking care of an elderly lady with Alzheimer's. The other day, she would be with her mom or family and still come take care of me, right? Well, she had this cruise coming up and everything. I said, Stacy, I really appreciate you helping me and being here for me. I can never repay you for that because she gave me the most valuable thing a person has, time, and she didn't ask for anything in return. Nothing. She wouldn't even let me buy some of the other shit that she wanted to eat because she says, no, I don't want your money, And anyway, I said, honey, I appreciate you being here, but you got to go home because you're running yourself ragged taking care of me. And so she goes, okay. When she left, Tim, that was, I guess, like I said, the end of July. When she left, I guess it was about 7 to 10 days later, give or take, that I called Dan. I said, Dan, because he had been really proud of me. I mean, trying to get help and all that. I said, I'm looking around, Dan, and my place is starting to look like it did before Stacy came. It's just a matter of time before I see things piling up enough that I'm going to feel like I need to use. And that's when Dan said, are you willing to do harm reduction? And I didn't even know what that was. I'm like, what is that? And he's like, well, basically, just I'll accept you wherever you're at, Charlie, in your addiction or recovery. I'll accept you and be right beside you. He said, harm reduction is the idea of, like, say, if someone slams cocaine into their arm with a needle, that if they switch to intranasal, to sniffing it, that's harm reduction. Using less is harm reduction. So I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And so when I went to my guy and I got my stuff, I went back to using, but I went back to using kind of almost, I don't know, it might sound like a paradoxical thing, but I was measuring out in the mornings like a doctor would a prescription. I was measuring out my stuff and doing what I had to do just to get off the couch. But I started getting myself into a nightly routine the best I could. Uh, and that helped me. It wasn't a cure all, but that helped me to try to do less damage to my body. But I say all that, Tim, to say this, that going back to the beginning of 23, over 2 years ago now, that's when I surrendered. That's when I said, okay, I give up. I need some help, but I also need not just mental help, I need physical help. And to me, surrendering means that, you throw up the white flag and say, okay, I'm defeated. Drugs has taken my life over. I know this. I'm not going to deny it. I got to do something about it. But I really, truly, at that point in time, couldn't get the help that I needed. And so the following year, or excuse me, on the following year, 24, which was last year, in April of 24, is when that surrender looked like it was going to help me because that was my first time in being out of the service, what, almost 30 years, that I went to the VA. And that gave me what I hadn't had in a while, which was a little bit of hope, you know. So surrendering versus giving up is a big thing. And the last time you and I spoke, I had I had given up. I was just kind of waiting until my day came, and I couldn't wish it come fast enough because I was suffering, man. You know, when you really want help and you can't get it, that's a tough thing, dude. And I now that I'm in recovery, I think of so many good people that I've met that they want to get help. And whether it be due to lack of insurance or stigmatized behavior from the medical industry, that they don't get it. They don't get the help that they need. I mean, there are some people that are forced into recovery by the legal system. They're forced to go to treatment as part of their, you know, punishment, go to treatment or go to jail. Okay. So they come to treatment, but that can still save someone as long as they're open minded. When I went into residential treatment, Tim, when I walked through those, I went through the gate, walked through those doors, I knew I could quit dope. That wasn't my issue. I wanted to get well, but I also wanted to find out between my ears, why would I allow me to keep hurting myself the way that I had? So really, you want to change your way of thinking about everything to get out of this slump. And although I'm not even there yet, at least I'm getting better by the day right now.
What I would like to ask, I don't believe we ever specified in the 13 and a half hours that we published in those first 8 visits. Are you comfortable enough, I guess, to discuss what that drug of choice was? And I have a very, very vivid memory of one of our earliest phone calls. I was in a hotel room in Nashville.
Yeah.
And we had done a couple episodes, and I asked you what that substance was. And you
And
kind
I
of
remember telling you on the phone. Oh
right,
yeah.
right.
I'm sorry.
You kind of filled me in on what that does the first time you take it, and then the 1,000th time. So share whatever, if you can recreate that discussion, share whatever you're comfortable with. But I'd like to capture that conversation.
Yeah, that for me at that point in time, I guess the reason why I didn't want to give the name of the substance that was destroying me was because there is so much stigmatized treatment and behaviors, labeling that people automatically do to a certain substance, whether it be alcohol or drugs, pills, whatever. And then they put a name on that person. Oh, they're a big drunk. Oh, they're a cokehead. They're a meth head. They're a pill popper, and they belittle them by those words. That's why I didn't want to share it. But the substance, I and it's funny because I go to recovery meetings, and what I say is I'm Charlie in recovery from poly substances, because when it comes down to it, I always wanted more. I didn't give a shit what it would be. If it would be opiates, coke, methamphetamine, marijuana, drinking, didn't matter. Something to numb myself. I had always kind of wanted to do since my early 20s, really, but the substance that ultimately made me give up my career, made me give up my gal, Sherry, and made me give up my fucking IRA that I'd saved my whole life for, was methamphetamine. And for me, the main reason why, I guess, or what allowed me to become addicted to that specifically. Now, this is just Chuckology. It's just my theory. But the psychiatrists, therapists, and other people in recovery that I've bounced this off of, they kind of feel the same way as me, which is 20 so years, give or take, plus on the boats, professional mariner, holding my license. I was prescribed several meds, some for cholesterol, blood pressure, what have you, and some for mental reasons, depression, anxiety. I was prescribed 4 meds that, due to the upcoming subchapter M laws that were going to be put in place in June of 2018, I had to stop taking on the vessel in order to operate on my license. So at that point in time, it was getting close. And I remember telling at the time, my primary doc, this civilian doc, it wasn't military. I said, man, I'm going to have to stop all these in order to do my job. And I said, I don't know how to even go about it. And those 4, just to let you know, were Xanax, my fear of flying, and anything, any sort of aircraft. I don't give a shit if it's one of them big old space buses that goes from Europe to the United States or one of them little crop dusters. I don't want to get up in the air, but I did for my work reasons over the years. That, opiates, which I had been prescribed due to surgery, but I had been on at that point, like, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years, And then the other 2 were Effexor and Lexapro. So I say that, Tim, because those 4 were legal prescribed drugs to me. On my days off, I would sip alcohol about 6 out of 7 days out of the week on my 4 weeks off. But I don't recall being heavily drunk very often. I did a couple times get, liquored up enough where maybe I would say, Sherry, will you drive us home? Just kind of on that marginal kind of decision making. I say, will you drive us home? But for the most part, I always wanted to stay in control. So I would sip Jameson neat after Charlie come home from school, 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening. And I'd have a water back sitting right there by my recliner. We'd watch TV, popcorn, do whatever. And I would stop sipping whiskey at about 8 or so p.m. Enough to where I always felt like if something happened to my child and I needed to rush him to the hospital, I felt like I could, to stay in control. I wanted to stay in control of me. I didn't want things to control me. And so when I went back and I caught the boat that first trip without those 4 prescriptions, I still had all my other ones with me, cholesterol, blood pressure, all that other bull crap. I didn't know how much they had been helping me until I got off of them. Because it was like 2, maybe 3 months after that I started getting the reoccurring dream of the helicopter crash in the Persian Gulf. And at first I thought, oh, this is just temporary. I thought, why is this now coming back though? Type of thing, And then it kept happening. Well, if you've been around, even though you're not on the boat, you're in the office, you've been around long enough to know at this point, most pilots and captains can get about 6 hours of sleep, 7 if you're lucky, but it's fragmented. The longest sleep that I would usually get would be right at about 4 hours. And that was if I got relieved, we did our turnover, the captain and I, go down, grab a little something to eat and go right to bed and get up just to put my clothes on and brush my tooth and head on up. About 4 hours. But what started happening was in that 4 hours, let's say I'm 2 hours into my sleep and one of them nightmares would have happened. And I because up until then, I had had dreams like anyone had, like as a little boy, the monster in the closet type of thing. But these were so real, man, because they were things I had experienced, that every time I'd get up, man, my my mattress in the stateroom would be soaked out from my sweat. I mean, my underbritches and everything. And I jump up, my heart beating 100 miles a minute. I run it over to the shutters and open them up and just try to zap out of it. You know what I mean? Zap out of it. I couldn't go back to sleep after something like that. I was too fucking amped up, man. So what I started doing, because that was happening on my days off as well. And on my days off, I guess the only advantage was I didn't have to worry about getting back up to go upstairs to Pilot House. I mean, I could sleep. Charlie was driving himself to high school, you know. And for the first little bit, Sherry was there, and she would wake up before me, and she would be there when I got up from one of these and comforting me, you know, saying, "Hey, baby, you're fine," this and that. But eventually, that started getting into her sleep because she had to get up at 5 a.m. and go do her job at the bakery, and there was a couple times that she said, "Baby, I love you." She said, "But some of the stuff that you're saying is pretty dark, and you talk a little before you get up." She said that this is something I can't handle. She said, because I can't help you. She said, I love you, but you got to go get help somewhere else because these are issues I wouldn't even know how to deal with, you know? When that happened, Tim, 2019-ish, you know, roughly, on my days off to cope, I started using methamphetamine, you know, a little here, little there.
And that was not the first time in your life that you encountered that substance, right? Or was it?
No, sir, it was not my first time. Now, I had dabbled in it a little bit when I first got out of the service. When I first got out of the service, in between becoming a deckhand and a pilot, I had danced around with anything: acid, methamphetamine, cocaine, you know, pills, microdots, heroin, booze, you name it. I've probably done it. And so I had dabbled in it, but it was never anything that controlled me. I didn't feel like. But those 4 pills, I'm guessing, and like I say, I'm not a doctor, this is just Chuckology, but my theory is once I stopped those, and I don't know which of the 4 or a combination of which, that I think what started to happen, and I'm learning now is educational, because this is my first time ever dealing with mental health shit. You didn't mention mental health in my family. You know, I mean, yeah, if you got a sore in your leg from falling off your bike or something, rub a little dirt on it and go on. But you didn't talk about like feelings and shit. And I mean, it just didn't happen. It was taboo, you know. And so now what I'm learning is those pills, or a combination thereof, probably over the years, they had gotten tweaked a little here and there from my primary doc. That what I believe is I think that they had been suppressing a lot of things in my life, you know, and just pushing them down, pushing them down, pushing them down, you know, numb myself, pushing it down. That I didn't realize it. I didn't know that that is called self-medicating, you know, but I also didn't know, due to ignorance, about a person has to process shit. Even as a small child, if a person feels pain or some sort of ache or agony, whether it be physical, mental, they need to process it. Because if you don't, and you have things to cover that up, legal prescription pills or illicit substances, that you're numbing yourself, but you're not processing it, where it just keeps going and getting shoved into your body. I'm telling you how I feel physically is that it gets stored in the body. You could only do standing at attention, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, after seeing some things. You can only do that for a while, man. If you don't process that shit, it's going to come out in some form or fashion, whether that be in a physical ailment or in a mental ailment. And when I stopped those, the nightmares started. I started remembering things that I really didn't care for in my childhood that turned into methamphetamine. Sure, it gave me energy while I was at home to kind of keep up on housework. Fair enough. But the biggest thing that it did for me was it kept me awake. So I didn't have to go to sleep to have those dreams. Because every time I would have one, man, they're horrifying when you wake up from one. It feels like it literally knocks time off your life. And so that was why I turned to methamphetamine when I did. It wasn't so much for the energy of, like, some people say, oh, I need to clean my house, so I'm gonna get a little bit of methamphetamine on Friday, do a speed cleaning for 3 days, go back to work on Monday, and that'll be it for the next 6 months. There's some people that can do that, you know. This guy wasn't one of them. But the main reason was because I did not want to sleep. I didn't want to dream. So what I started doing was using more. And as addiction is, more and more and more, you build up a tolerance to where you got to use more to get the same effect. Well, for methamphetamine specifically, what that started doing with me was it would keep me up, trying to control myself still. This before I resigned, trying to control myself was it would keep me up for 2.5, 3 days, and trying to self-discipline enough. I would peter out a little bit. And then I'd go, a day or two, and I would sleep. I'd catch up on rest because I'd be dog ass tired. But when I would sleep, if I dreamt, don't remember it because you're so exhausted. I think your body and your mind is so exhausted that when you lay down after 2, 3 days, if I did dream, I don't remember it because I think your brain's doing other things. It's trying to heal things. And that was when it was in the middle of 2019, roughly, that I really became addicted on my days off. And what I wound up doing for a couple of boat trips was about 4 or 5 days before I would catch the boat, stop it, be clean to go catch the vessel, and just live through hell. Quite, quite literally fatigued. Fatigued to the point where simple things like just looking at the radar and say flanking 40 loads, at nighttime, it's dark, but you got to be on it. I mean, this is a precise fucking job. There's not a whole lot of margin for error when you're looking down a bridge 8 wide. There's just not. You got to be on the money. And I'm not proud to say this, but I brought it back to the boat one trip. I brought an ounce back. And it bothers me to this day because it was a flood that year, a big flood. And I had a guy, he was a deckhand on the captain's watch, but he had asked me if he could come up and work on my watch. And to this day, he's a turn loose pilot, great guy, country fella, good values. And I helped him the best that I could with this position. But the whole time, knowing if either he messed up on watch or myself, it was still my responsibility. And that bothers me to reflect on because I didn't ever intend to put anyone in harm's way. That wasn't my intention. And so I think I've shared this, but what happened? I got home from that one trip and that flood. I got home. Actually, I rode over a few days because my relief was sick. And I'll never forget it was Captain Sam Keenan that came to relieve me right there at Memphis. at Memphis. And he was in retirement, but he still tripped a little here and there for the company. And I got off the boat on a Friday. Mentally, I was zapped. I was cooked, man. I had done minimal methamphetamine on that trip, just trying to stay somewhat in control, but still playing with fire. Knowing if we had piss test or an accident, God forbid, I would have been fucked. But just the stress of the flood and everything else. And I get home on a Friday, worked my nuts off on Saturday doing housework. On Sunday, I was doing the same thing. And I guess I let other people's I I guess me not being able to control other people, and when I say that, I mean Sherry and my son, to realize that they are two separate individuals than me on the way I think when it comes to like housework and whatnot, that I was irritated. So on a Sunday night, I had no dope on me. I left on my motorcycle against my own rule, which was my own rule was I don't ride anywhere at nighttime unless I'm with someone else, and we're in partnership, especially to places that I don't know, you know, because I mean, on a motorcycle at nighttime, you really got to pay more attention, I mean, fucking wildlife, deer, you name it, potholes, you name it, you can't see it.
It just froze up again. I can hear
How
you.
about
There we
now?
go. All right.
How about
There we go. Gotcha.
how about now? That's what I've been saying. How about now? Okay, cool. And on just let me know if I get cut off again. And on that night, I went down the highway on the freeway, which is pretty safe usually. It's well lit. But I turned off on this country road and I went on this road for, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 miles. And then I turned off on a blacktop road.
I got Blacktop Road and it froze. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I sure can, buddy. Let me turn my thing up here. This is on my phone.
Okay. We're gonna try this for a while.
Yeah, why not?
All right. So I heard Blacktop Road, which is the last
Yeah.
thing.
Okay, so yeah, I'm on this blacktop road, and little did I know that at the very and by the way, we've got some hella storms coming through too, right now. Some severe weather. Um, so I'm on this blacktop road and I'm going down, and it comes to a T. Well, that T was a gravel road, and I thought, no, I mean taking a fat boy on a Harley Davidson on a gravel road, it's not fun. So I turn around, did a U-turn, which is of course in first gear, it's in a slow speed, and I'm giving her a little bit of gas. I pop it into second. I get up to about 20 miles an hour, and out of my peripheral on my left side, I see like this garage light or something come on, like one of them automatic lights, I guess. And I look for just a second, just that 1 second. And I hit a patch, I guess, of, people driving on and off gravel roads, blacktop, you're going to get some gravel on it. I hit a patch of gravel, and it wasn't even a turn. It was just like a little dog leg in the road. Man, I started losing control, and I thought, oh fuck, this is gonna hurt. And I thought if I'm gonna go in the ditch, I want to land as flat and vertical as I can. And I had a wreck. It opened up my whole left side, my left eye, above my left eye, road rash on my arm, my left leg, my left foot, and it was laying on its side. I picked it up off of its side and got it vertical. And I kept feeling this warmth running down my face, and I couldn't see out of my left eye. I didn't know why. I clicked on my little flashlight and looked in my mirror on the motorcycle, and I had this blood coming down. And Luckily, I was wearing a helmet. It was a half shell, but it was a helmet nonetheless because that half shell I was wearing was a chrome one. It had a big gash just right here from the upper part of my eye back. That would have been my brains, you know. But I didn't lose consciousness, and I called Charlie, my son, and it was right around 11 o'clock p.m. He had school the next day. Now I knew not to call Sherry. Sherry was just, and I'm not afraid to say it. Um, she is more concerned about her own well-being, which is fine. I mean, people are that way sometimes. And she had to get up at 3 on that morning because on the first of the Monday of the month, she would have to get up at 3 and do inventory once a month. And here it was, the last day of September, and I knew she had to get up at 3, and here it is, 11 o'clock p.m. So I called Charlie and I told him, I said, buddy, grab the keys to my Chevy and get in it and just start driving westbound on 70. And I'll get back with you. I said, I just had a motorcycle wreck and I'm hurt, you know. He said, okay, Dad. So as he was, I guess, leaving, I figured out the coordinates of where I was and I punched it into him. And he got there about 45 minutes later because it was a ways away from the house, you know. As soon as he got out of the vehicle, man, I was just standing there waiting for him. He gave me a big hug. He was kind of worked up, crying a little. He said, Dad, I'm just glad you're okay. I didn't know if I'd come here and find you, you know, unconscious or what, you know, because I told him, I said, don't use your cell phone. Try to save as much juice as you can, and I'm going to do the same, you know, just for practical reasons. So right away, he got me in the vehicle and he drove me to the nearest emergency room. There is relevance to this too, by the way, regarding my drug abuse. Get to the emergency room. They checked me out, did an MRI, CAT scan, the whole works to make sure I didn't have internal bleeding or anything. But buddy, once they started pulling the gravel and rocks out of my arm and my leg, you talk about a whole nother kind of pain, buddy. I was in it. And I was starting to yell, squeal almost. I said, please stop. I said, I'll do this at home. I'll soak it in a bathtub and I said, please stop. I said, I'm in too much fucking pain. So I went home. I was supposed to catch a boat in less than 4 weeks, right? Because I had just gotten off the boat. So in less than 4 weeks, I got to go back. And I called uh, people I needed to in the office, my supervisors, and I said, hey, I've had a motorcycle wreck. I hope to be back by the time, but I don't know if I will be or not because I'm bandaged up pretty good, you know. When that time came, I wasn't ready yet. I mean, I wasn't fully walking good again yet, you know. So they gave me a couple more weeks off. And the long story short to this is this. While I was laid up, Sherry went to work every day. Of course, Charlie was at school every day. Being that time of the year, he was doing a lot of things after school, like with the marching band, this and that. That mm, my meth use increased tremendously. I mean, tremendously, because I wasn't working, laid up, and I mean, like I said, I didn't intend to become that addicted, but I began to become that addicted where I had to have more, had to have more, had to have more. And when the time came for me to go back to work, I got on the boat in St. Louis, my boat that I was on regular. And the captain on there, a good friend of mine to this day that I got a lot of respect for, that I didn't have any dope with me, right? And I didn't have any on me at all. that couple, it wasn't even a couple days. It was like a day or something. I had been on there. I couldn't get up and down the five flights of stairs very well. And my fatigue was off and on, where he just said, Charlie, you got to go home. I'm not just saying this as Captain. I'm saying this as your friend. He says, you still need more time to heal, buddy. So I got off the boat right there in St. Louis. When that happened, I went back home, continued to heal physically enough where here it is, I'm ready to go back to work. So I'm ready to go back. And normally on that morning when I would go back to work, Sherry and Charlie, they would see my luggage sitting by the door, usually, wearing, some khakis and a dress shirt, what have you, whatever. That on that day, they left and I got my smoking jacket, put that on, went outside of the carport, and I just started looking for medical resources from the company I worked or for any kind of substance abuse treatment. When Sherry got home, I told her first. I just said, Sherry, she goes, why aren't you at work? I said, I got to talk to you. And I asked her to sit down in the front room. I was nervous, man, but I thought she's the first person I need to tell. I share a bed with this woman, and I told her. And then I asked her, I said, will you please get on speaker with me and call my supervisor? Because my supervisor knew Sherry. He had met her a few times at captain's meetings and whatnot. And I just told him, I said, Randy, I got a problem with drugs, And he said, you? And I said, yeah, I do. I said, and it's something that I can't come back to work right now. He said, no problem, man. We'll get you some help and get you what you need. Well, after all the hoops and loops and kind of what he knew, he turned me on to the people in the office, right, to help me out. I come to find out, I guess, the most or the highest level of treatment that I could get and still come back to work with no problem was an IOP. Do you know what that is? An IOP is intensive outpatient treatment. So it's something that any type of uh, mental or substance abuse place that operates one of these is usually anywhere from 3 to 5 days a week, about 4 hours a day for 6 weeks, 4 weeks in some cases. That is what IOP is. But that's the highest level of treatment that I could get without jeopardizing my license, let's say, in my job. So Tim, I went to that IOP. Sherry was very supportive. So was my son. And I had told my son, I didn't tell him all the dirty details, but I had told him, I said, Charlie, I've tried to teach you to be a good man. And part of that is being an honest person of integrity. I said, I want you to know that I've got an addiction problem. But I said, and I want you to know that if I become distant or seem weird, it has nothing to do with you, buddy. It's just me battling me. And he said, no problem, Dad. I'm glad that you're trying to get help. So he was very supportive as well. I went through that IOP. And then, as on the Sling Blade movie, and then they turned me loose, told me I was that I went back to work. Well, my boat was out of pocket, and my days were to be off at that point. So they put me on the Buckeye State to run a full trip just to kind of get me back in the loop, to get me on payroll, right? Which I appreciated. But here I was without the pharmaceuticals that I had given up a year before, without methamphetamine. I go back with pretty hopeful mood. And it was about, and I'll never forget he's a coon-ass dude, great guy, good pilot too. It'll come to me here in a little bit. But anyway, he was running captain on the boat, and I was filling in as pilot.
About 2 weeks into that trip, the nightmares started. And I don't think sometimes he knew what to think of it, but he was very, what's the word, empathetic. He didn't ever judge me, but I would come up a couple times in my underwear out of a nightmare. And he would be like, and I'd say, man, Cap, I'm just trying to snap out of one of these nightmares, man. And I knew in my heart right then, I thought, I can't do this because either A, I'm going to start using again, and I'm gonna wind up failing a piss test, you know. And if that happens, B, to ever think that I would get one of them boys hurt, that bothered me, man. Because I thought it's one thing to fuck up my life. It's another thing to look out at that crew and to say, wow, I mean, here's 10 to 15 people that their families expect you to bring them back in the same condition that they're leaving in. They depend on Captain Charlie for that. You know, that's someone's uncle, husband, brother, son, whatever. And so when I got off the boat, that trip, I resigned. And that was in January of 2020. So I did the IOP like I was told. I even signed a contract for random piss tests for the next 2 years, whenever they wanted, on my days off even. I gave them that. There was one that had occurred on a real snowy day because I remember I couldn't get up my fucking road. Anyway, I hadn't used yet, but I had a feeling something different had to start happening, because if I really wanted real help, like to get inpatient somewhere and really jump both feet into recovery, I'd be fucked on my job. Wouldn't be able to go back to it. But if I didn't do that and I went back to my job, eventually I was going to be using. So I don't know what I was thinking, Tim, at this point. But after the IOP, went back to work for one trip. I resigned in January of 2020 in the tail end, thinking, well, maybe I'll just take a few months off, like a hiatus or something, because I had worked my whole life paying taxes since I was 16 years old. To that point, I was always employed somewhere doing something. I thought maybe I just need to take a break. You know, I had some money in savings. I thought I can live and ball on a budget with no problem because I've done it before in the past. That I'll just take some time off. But that time turned into me once again becoming addicted, to the point where I didn't even wait for Sherry to tell me or to feel obligated to say something to me. I just told her one day, I said, honey, if you want to bow out and leave from this relationship, as much as I wouldn't like it, I said, I understand if you don't want to be around me, because I don't want to be around me. And she still continued to come around every once in a while, but that became zero. And that first 2020, 2021, up until about the mid part of 22, and I can give you an exact date, that was in August, that for those first 2.5 years, 2 years and 8 months, I was addicted and wasn't feeling bad about it. You know, I still had control over my functioning, mowing my grass, paying my bills, doing the things the guys got to do, except I wasn't employed. And when physically it started to bother me in June of 22, I had went to the emergency room. They did an EKG because I was having heart issues, I felt like. And the EKG came back, obviously, after they had already discharged me. And I didn't have a primary doctor, you know, and I'm not an EKG reading guy. I didn't go to school for that shit. But at the top of EKGs, they put some writing in there, typing in there that's kind of, a no-brainer, you know, my name, Charles Kulage, age, blah, blah, blah. And what it said was myocardial infarction. Well, I had to look that word up. That's a fancy name for a heart attack, you know. And I thought, shit, man, I'm really starting to destroy my body. I got to be careful, you know. But at that point, I was, I don't know, about once every 3 months or so going to see my guy. Luckily, I was dealing with someone who was able to supply a large enough amount that it wasn't stepped on, because people started dying in the St. Louis area. I mean, dying because they were getting methamphetamine that was laced with fentanyl and they didn't know it. And I don't know if you know anything about fentanyl, but it doesn't take much to kill a person. Now, if a person builds up a tolerance to it, then they can use a lot, you know, but to do it unknowingly and to do any kind of amount, it will drop you dead in a matter of a minute, man. And so I was blessed in that aspect that I was getting pure methamphetamine. So, and I only know that because piss tests never showed fentanyl whenever I would have them, which became later in the story. But that conversation that you and I had about methamphetamine, which would have been, I guess, last year around this time, possibly, because you and I did our first podcast together in December of 23, if I remember right.
Yeah, that's when you reached out. And then I was in Nashville probably March or so of 24.
Right. So about a year ago, yeah. And that was when I still had a little hope, I guess, but it was running out. And the idea of me even reaching out to you, and it still stands to this day, is because I didn't want to glorify drug use. I do not condone drug use by any means. I think it's horrible. But I figured if I can touch one person who's listening that is addicted, that does have a safety sensitive job, to let them know that you're not alone, man. Because let me tell you something. Airline pilots, for example, Tim, you might know this or not. Airline pilots, if they come forward, right, and say, I got a problem with drugs or booze, they can go through a treatment that has a 90% success rate, right? And keep their license, but they, keep working, not the other modes of transportation. So in United States Coast Guard eyes, one of their criteria, or I guess you'd say disqualifiers, any psychiatric care or condition, you've got to basically jump through hoops about. Any suicidal ideations or anything along those lines, you're fucked. I mean, for the most part, that in my heart and in my mind, that's why I know there's some son bitches out there that are addicted, but they're afraid to come forward because they know, here I've got this decent income, great living, able to support their family, that if they come to get help, that's going to jeopardize their job. So they don't get the help, you know? And that's a tough spot to be in, dude, because I was there. I know. And when I think back now in hindsight, my boss, I was telling you about Randy, when we were talking and finding out what level of care I could get, I asked him, I said, well, Randy, what have you guys done in the past whenever someone comes forward? He goes, no one's came forward before on my watch while I've been a port captain. He said, usually someone's doing drugs, we find out because they pop dirty, you know? And he said, so I'm glad you had the honesty to come forward. And to this day, although bittersweet, that was one of the best decisions I've made in the last 10 years, was resigning. Because, man, my life began a spiral downhill. And when it begins, it doesn't end. with addiction. It just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. And some people say, oh, I had to do this to hit my bottom, or I'm not sure if I hit my bottom. Everybody's bottom is different. To me, what I'm learning right now, the only way that you don't have hope anymore is when you're buried. That's your bottom. So as long as you still got air in your lungs, there is hope. It's going to be tough. It'll be tough to get it, to get the help that you need, but there is hope, and my current living situation, my life right now is in recovery. And what I'm learning, Tim, especially due to my age and due to how long I was on some sort of pill, drink, drug, I'm going to have to live in recovery and visit the outside world. I can't live in the outside world and just visit recovery. If I do, for me, I know that I'll go back to using. I just can't do that right now. And I might not ever be able to, because if a person lives in the outside world and they got their family and they got their job and they got this and they got that, and they just want to visit recovery, once a week, and then once a week turns into once a month turns, it's not going to work. You have to put your recovery first. I'm learning. You have to. Above your wife, above your dogs, above your kids, above your job, everything. Because if you don't, you're not going to be well enough to do what you need to do for them in the outside world if you're not putting your recovery first every day. Whether that be dropping to your knees when you first got out of bed, praying to something that you choose to call God, or, going outside and with a bunch of other people in recovery and doing fireworks, whatever it is for a person, every path is different. If they don't live in recovery and visit the outside world, as sad as it is to say, I think that they won't succeed. And that's what I need. I'm taking all of the suggestions that I am getting and that I've got and that I'm still going to get. Because when I look at someone with 5, 10, 15, 20 years of sobriety, I figure they're doing something right. Something has kept them clean for this long. And so that's why when my caseworker asked me when I first got into inpatient, he goes, do you want to go into sober living whenever you leave here? Whenever that might be. I said, I don't even know what sober living is. I said, let me ask you something. If you were me, Chief, would you do sober living? He goes, for long-term recovery, I would. I said, sign me up, Buttercup. I'm not even going to argue again. I want whatever help you can suggest, because this guy's got 8 years clean. And another thing, this is just Chuckology, but the treatment center that I chose and that I was allowed to go to, that the VA paid for and is paying for, has a good long-term success rate for people that do as they suggest, because not all, but most of the staff, Timmy, are in recovery themselves. Most of them. Whether they hold degrees, they were a principal at a high school once, or if they only finished the 9th grade and got certification through the state of Missouri, which is where I live, that most of the people in the staff have been in recovery. So the labeling, the stigmatized behavior, me personally, zilch with the recovery center I chose. And for someone who's got 8 years clean that says that he would recommend that I do something, if he says jump, I'm going to ask how high, because I figure he's doing something right. Not to say that his path is something I'm going to try to mimic. Everyone's got their own path to take. But in the meantime, I got to take suggestions, man. I'm almost 5 decades old, but I've not ever went through mental health shit before and understood. I'm still learning of how substance abuse and mental health, they go hand in hand, dude. I mean, I'm finding, sure, you might have some people that are just doing drugs but usually there's some underlying fucking reason why they have been. And that's what you got to tap into. It's not quitting the dope. The dope is the solution. Drinking is the solution to your ailments, whatever they might be. Those are solutions. They're not the healthy ones, though. And so what I'm learning now is when I get nervous or happy or upset, whatever you want to call it, I let that shit out, man, because that's processing it. If you don't process it, you have no way to detach from it and let it go. You got to let go of some things, man, of all things that you hold resentment about, you know. And I know I've got diarrhea of the mouth, but man, my brain's ticking right along here. There was while I was an inpatient, my anxiety was high at first. There was this one nurse, and man, I love the nurses there on staff, great gals. Some of them in recovery, some of them not. But this one nurse, she says, Charlie, you got to slow your breathing down, honey. She goes, just slow your breathing. You got to slow down, right? She was telling me this because I was having like a panic attack of sorts. That's what I tried to do. And so I was trying to control myself every time something was happening. And no disrespect to her, but one of the gals there that was part of the staff, she was part of the wellness crew, and a bald gal named Rebecca, great lady. She follows the Buddhism side, the Eightfold Path and stuff like that. And she worked with me a little one-on-one because I told her I was having a problem with this whole higher power thing with God. You know, I just didn't believe. I don't believe in that. That the Buddhism works more on your inner self. But this is what she told me. She said, Charlie, I don't want to go against what medical says to you, you know, because they are educated on this. She says, but from an inner peace perspective, she says, I want to tell you how you deal with something. If you begin to get angry or anxious, sit down. And if you're breathing fast, don't try to control it. Don't try to slow it down. Just notice it. If your foot is shaking 100 miles a minute, don't try to slow it down. Just notice it. You know, if your hand's trembling, if you're crying, don't try to stop any of that, she said. Just notice it, be in the moment, and feel it. Whether it takes 5 minutes or fucking 30 minutes, however long, to sit there and sit with it. Because she said, if you don't, you won't be able to detach. And that made sense to me, man, because there's times right now, Tim, that my body does things physically, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? You know, different shakes, tremors, or emotions that cause certain things. And when they do, I don't question it anymore, man, and wonder why. I just sit with it. And I try to calm my mind and notice those things. And I figure that the more I do that, the better I'll be at finding inner peace, because I'm still not there yet. And I say the word yet because I'm hopeful. But right now, I'm still early in recovery, man. I got a long fucking way to go, buddy, because I really need help. I'm still in full-time recovery, right? Although I'm not inpatient, I live in a sober living house with 36 other folks in recovery. You know, I share an apartment with 3 other men in recovery. I come to outpatient every day. I drive here 5 days a week. I go to 6 recovery meetings per week in the evening, because that's what I need, man. It's going to be a while before I don't need that.
Well, I was very happy to hear from you that you were driving again. When did that restart? Was that a confidence boost, or was that out of a necessity to not burden anyone else? Or, you know, how did that develop?
Well, that's a good question. So just to go back on thought on just a quick summary up until me not driving, was I drove for about my first 2 years in addiction. I would drive to Home Depot or to the donut shop on Sundays, something like that. But me doing that and going into public places in general started to diminish, right? When I really became isolated in my home, where I didn't leave. I didn't leave to go to a damn grocery store, gas station, nothing. And I stopped driving. It was due to the anxiety of thinking, like, for example, I got a green light, I'm doing 50 mile an hour, and someone who's got a red light, I see them still coming at a pretty good clip, right? As I was catastrophizing everything. Why? Because I've seen these things happen. I've seen the wrecks. I've been in them. You know, I've seen these different things happen due to my experiences in my life. And because of my age, the older you get, the more experiences that you get, it's freaked the fuck out of me. Going out into public places, it still does. To go into somewhere public, I haven't done that, man, because I'm too nervous about someone else's intention, about what they might want to do to hurt me or whatever. So leading up to the driving thing, my last, I guess, 2 years before I entered inpatient, the only two people that I would get, or three people that I would get in a car with, were my cousin, Bridget, my grocery lady, Margie, and my son, Charlie. And for that last year in isolation, I guess, 9 months, I didn't leave my house at all, unless it was for a medical reason, at all. I wouldn't go anywhere. So when Charlie and his wife were driving me down to the inpatient, I laid my seat back, the passenger seat. We were driving my vehicle, Charlie was. And I laid it all the way back and smoked a joint, you know, which marijuana I'm still prescribed, but I can't take it right now while I'm in housing. And because that wasn't the drug that brought me down, I don't think, you know, and I still believe that, but I'm not using it because it's against the rules and I need this. But he drove me down there, and I'll never forget that my daughter-in-law, Najla, when we pulled up to the gates, she says, "Wow, Poppy, this place is nice." Because it's out in the country, man. They got a big pond there, beautiful facility. I mean, it's out in the wilderness. It's a very cool place to go. It's out in the country, man. And I said, "Yeah, I asked for the 5-star treatment, baby." Well, here's what happened. As I got into my first 30 days of recovery, on staff, they do have, of course, RNs like around the clock. There is an RN on duty around the clock for sure. 2 of them. That the docs or the nurse practitioners that you see once a week, their main thing, their shtick is psychiatry. That's their main thing. But they've also been through medical school or whatever, so they know other things. Well, they had advised me. They said, "You need to go to the VA clinic or wherever, and you need to get checked out physically because of some of these things going on." I said, "Okay," because I mean, I wanted to get well, but I said, my son's got a new job now. I don't know who's going to be able to take me. And they said, "One of our staff will, one of the staff that's on the floor." I said, "I don't know about it," because I was nervous, Tim. I was nervous to get in a car with anyone other than my son at that point. And so I was getting ready to go to the doctor. They had a fella named Avery who was going to drive me there and bring me back. That I was so nervous. I wasn't crying out of sadness, but I had these tears just rolling down my face out of anxiety, you know. That, and I'll give a shout out, Dylan and Emily, power couple, man. He's a veteran. He's the maintenance man for the facility, but he also, more importantly, he runs a men's empowerment group 3 days a week. That is some powerful shit, man. He's a great dude in recovery himself. And his wife, Emily, is a counselor, caseworker, whatever there nowadays. That they stopped what they were doing and they came to the front door as we were getting ready to leave, and And she brought me these stress balls. She said, Charlie, on your road trip, just squeeze on these and close your eyes, and breathe. And Dylan gave me a big old hug. He's like, buddy, you're gonna be fine. You're in good hands with Avery. And I trust Dylan. He's a good man. So we get in the druggy buggy together, me and this dude Avery, and about almost all the way there, I just squeezed these, and I looked at him while we were talking, and then I would just kind of just close my eyes if I looked forward. We go to the doctor, we get out, we're on our way back, and he says, I got to stop and get some gas. I said, okay. So he stops, he pulls up to the pump. Avery does. He does his thing, and he gets back in the driver's seat and says, man, I'm gonna have to go. I gotta go inside to get a receipt because it didn't print one out for the record for the company. I said, okay. He goes, I'm not allowed to leave you alone in the vehicle. And I said, man, fuck. I said, dude, I ain't been in a gas station in a long time, buddy. I'm kind of afraid. And he said, don't worry, I'll stand right by you, man. So when we got in, as soon as we walked in through the doors, there was a donut rack, dude. And I was like, oh. I said, Avery, can I get a donut? He goes, yeah, man. As long as it's gone before we get back to the facility, you can get whatever you want. I got me 2 donuts, and man, they were 89 cents a piece. And I thought, I'm doing this as a reward to myself for doing something uncomfortable, because I'm learning that in order to overcome my fears and my anxiety, I got to lean into them. I got to embrace them, man, and lean into it in order to overcome it. And if you're not doing something uncomfortable, you're not growing, right? Is what I'm learning. So going back to the driving thing, we got back in one piece, and I just hugged Avery. I said, man, thank you for being a safe driver. And I said, no problem. I thought that would be my last trip in a vehicle with someone other than my son. It was about 6 weeks into my 9th week there that I moved to what they call PHP, partial hospitalization. And I didn't move away from the facility, but I did go into a different building. And when you're in this building, it's called Hilltop. It's people that are kind of getting healed on their way out, maybe soon, that 2 or 3 times a week, they take the members to an outside 12-step meeting somewhere, and they can hold 14. So people sign up ahead of time to be able to go just to get away, from there. But I didn't want to leave there because I was too afraid, and I didn't want to get in the van. And but I knew I was going to have to ride in this van eventually, because that was the van that was going to transport me back to the city after I got discharged. And once again, I just leaned into it, and I met the van driver, little bitty, short, wide black feller named Mike. And I just walked up to him and I said, Mike, I'm scared to get in this van with you. Nothing against you driving. I'm just afraid of other folks too. And he said, don't worry, man. I'll keep you guys safe. He says, you're fine with me. So I got in, and you usually, and after that first time, I was still nervous each time, but I kept doing it so I would get better at that. And sometimes I would just sit in between 2 other people, but I got to wear a seatbelt. So if I was in the damn row without a seatbelt, no, sir. I'm getting next to the window or somewhere. I know I got a safety belt. But I would always sit next to someone who was very supportive, and all of them were supportive. Everyone in the van, because they were all members just like me. And so when I got close to being discharged, I called Charlie and I just said, hey, buddy, I'm going to need my vehicle because I'm going to be going to a sober living place. And he brought it. He brought it. But I didn't start driving right away, which the first 4 weeks, you're not allowed to drive anyway by yourself. You can take someone else who's in a higher phase that's got more recovery time, but you can't drive yourself. And I was relieved because they provide transportation back and forth to outpatient from our housing, you know. I was riding the druggy bug with Mike and the couple others that do it regular for a living. But the time came that I had to get groceries. I mean, a guy's got to fucking eat, right? And I'm thinking, man, I can't do that Instacart shit. That's expensive, you know? Or one of these DoorDash jobbers or Grubhubs, Uber Eaters. I don't know what they're called. I don't have none of that shit except for my legs to go in. And so I asked my housemate, Steven Ledbetter, great guy. He's a few years older than me, but he's in much better shape than I am. That I just told him, I said, man, I gotta go grocery shopping, but I don't want to be by myself. And he said, don't you worry, buddy. I'll stand right beside you. No one will fuck with you with me around. And because even though he's kind of skinny and, you know, doesn't say much, I could tell he's a scrapper, you know, because I can't carry I can't carry my firearms either, Timmy, as long as I'm in housing. I'm not allowed to have them. And so I drove the first time with Steven. I moved there in January 22nd, and it was, I guess, the end of the first full week in February is when I got in my car with Steven, and it was only like 3 miles to the grocery store that I drove fine. Matter of fact, as I started driving, I realized right then I'm much more comfortable with me driving than I am with riding with someone else. Not to say that the van drivers are poor drivers, not to say my son's a poor driver, not to say Miss Margie's a poor. It's just I'm finding that me behind the wheel, I'm not as nervous as a whore in church, you know. So I drove with Steve. We went to Walgreens and to the grocery store. And to this day now, he goes with me about once a week. We go there together. I won't go in anywhere public yet, but I did drive myself to outpatient after I graduated to that next level. After my first 4 weeks of outpatient, I drove myself, and I did okay. But the route that the GPS thing took me goes right, I mean, 1 block from my guy's house that I used to deal with. And I thought, man, it'd be so easy just to stop and make a right-hand turn and go get what I need to get well, you know? So when I'm by myself now driving, I don't go that route. I go out of the way, even though it's a few minutes longer, because I know me. And right now, I'd be too tempted to stop on a day when I'm feeling fatigued, feeling like shit. Physically, still, I feel like shit every day when I move too much, that it would be way too tempting for me to go the quickest route. So I take a longer route when I'm by myself. When I have a housemate with me, I'll do it because we have accountability for one another, you know. And Steven is strong enough in his recovery because he's almost got 2 years clean that he won't let me stop, even if I wanted to, which I don't want to, but he wouldn't let me. He'd say, no, buddy, we just need to go on home, you know? And so I appreciate that support. And that's when I started driving again, was first after the first week of February. Yeah.
Well, you've mentioned, of course, trying to detox alone at your house and the difficulties of that. Walk me through for this recovery process from that inpatient. How was detox under medical care? Was there any point you just were going to say fuck this and let me go back home? You know, how, like, walk me through from, it was I think November last year till January when you got to outpatient.
So what happened was the VA found me disabled September 20th of last year. So from April to September, I was allowed any mental health care from the VA, anything at VA for mental health care. But that was it. I could get physical health care, but I still had to pay co-pays and, you know, normal things a guy would have to pay, you know. So they found me disabled, and I don't know if all the listeners know all the details, but I know that you do, that because of what I experienced last July from at the VA, there was no way in hell I was going there for treatment, dude. So I asked my psychiatrist. I said, well, I learned what my benefits were, Tim, and one of them, being disabled now, is I'm allowed to do what they call CCN, Community Care Network. That means anything non-VA that the VA either A, doesn't offer, or B, that you live outside of like a 40-mile radius from, okay, that you can get a civilian doctor and the VA will cover you. But you have to have a referral from the VA, right? So here's what happened. My psychiatrist, when I found this out, I asked him, I said, hey, doc, I've been looking at the treatment facility options that I'm entitled to now. Will you start me a referral for Sauna Lake Recovery out in the country? You know, it was one of the VA approved things, right? There were like 7 of them that I was going to have an option for. You know, some of them state ran facilities, whatever, yada, yada, yada. Well, I did my homework, Timmy. You know, I'm not as dumb as they fucking think I am. I started looking up Google reviews, calling places. You know, I wanted to make sure, damn sure, that I wasn't going to go into another place that mistreated me, man, that didn't treat me as a person. I don't want that. And so my psychiatrist said he wouldn't start the referral because the VA offers an inpatient program. So, okay. So I chewed on that, kind of bounced some ideas around off my therapist. Anyway, long story short, I got a hold of the VA's inpatient admissions coordinator, right? And I'll give him a shout out, Justin Bennett. And he listened with open ears. I told him my story, what had happened at VA in July. And after about an hour, when he heard my story and saw what I was up against of the treatment that I wanted, he said, Charlie, I don't care if you come to VA or where you go. I just want to see you get help, you know. Man, I was so relieved. And then he says this, he goes, I'll start the referral for you. And I said, you're allowed to do that? Because he's not a doctor, right? He goes, yeah. He goes, I'm not a doctor, but I'm a social worker. I've been doing this 17 years. He says, I can start the referral and run it on up the line. The worst they can do is say no. That's where you're at now, you know. So he wrote this referral, and here I was kind of waiting, because it takes a minute for all that shit to happen, you know. That it went up all the way past the hospital, had the same some main shit stain that runs this area. A guy with a lot of titles before and after his last name, anyway. That he put on the comments when it got to him that veteran was treated unfairly at John Cochran Hospital, VA Hospital, from July 3rd to July 8th. And this is clinically needed for his recovery. And he stamped an approval. Dude, I was so grateful. And so when that happened, what I started doing, because remember, I was still in active addiction, but I had done it with harm reduction. You remember that what I did was I thought, okay, instead of going to replenish my stock, when I run out, because I didn't know when I was going to be able to go. I just knew it had been approved. So I started tapering down from a half gram of methamphetamine per day down to about a quarter gram. And on Veterans Day, 11/11/24, I was out of product, and I haven't used since then. And here's what happened. Obviously, now that I'm out, I am going to be in the detox process, right? So I know I'm starting to suffer here in the next 2 or 3 days. I'm going to be fucked. It was on that Thursday. So this was on a Monday that I ran out, right? On that Thursday, which would have been the 14th of November, this lady calls from the VA, from CCN, Community Care, Nurse Connie Fitzgerald, man, sweet black lady. She said, Charlie, you've been approved to go to Sauna Lake Recovery, and it's set up now. I've already done the stuff. You can go whenever you want. And I was like, yes. And my son's next day to be able to spend with me, to take me, was on that Saturday coming up. And in the meantime, mind you, I didn't tell you this, I left this out, was I had called Sauna Lake. I called at about 10 p.m. on a Friday night, just in despair, man. You know, just asking how their program works, you know. The lady that answered the phone, she just listened. And she listened. And her shift was about to be done at 11 o'clock, right? This was 10 o'clock p.m. Her shift was getting ready to get done. And I said, honey, I'll let you go. I know you got to probably go home. She said, no, I don't want you to get off the phone until you're ready. And dude, she stayed on the phone with me for like another hour after that. And she told me, she said, I'll check on you every day until you get your approval. And she did. Her name was Haley. I've never met her in person, but here's why I chose Sauna Lake, is because I thought, if everyone working there has the same level of compassion that this lady does, that's where I need to go. I need to go there. So when Charlie and his wife drove me, unlike some others that go into treatment, because I mean, this was all brand new to me, buddy. I ain't never been into no inpatient mental substance abuse type of place before. I just haven't. I mean, I didn't know anything about it. That maybe I'm an anomaly, but when I got there, I was anxious at first because of just the unknown, you know, that as soon as we parked the vehicle and we got to the front doors, which, by the way, Haley called me on my way down from there, saying, she was hooping so loud on the phone, I had to hold it away. I said, oh, she goes, woo, I'm so excited for you. You know, you're going to be down there. I'm calling them, telling them that you're ready to get admitted, you know. And I walked through those doors, and man, I was just really, really nervous. There was this big, hefty, large fellow with a big red beard and mustache, young fella, and he says, "Hey, I'm Chase. I'll be taking care of you for now." And he reached his hand out, and I just said, "Can I give you a hug instead? Because I'm a hugging guy." And he gave me a big hug, and he did what I call, or what I know now is called the change out. So that's where they take all your luggage and shit. For the next 24 hours, you ain't getting shit because they're going to go through it, make sure you ain't got any contraband, drugs, you know. But he was very compassionate. So that relieved me a little of my anxiety. My son and his wife left. My son assured me he would come. He would come visit me every Saturday. And he did while I was there, inpatient. That the next person that I got into, and this is there's relevance to this because this facility holds about 80 patients that I just didn't know what to expect. You know, I was leaning into the uncomfortable that nurse Cass, she goes by Cassandra, and it just so happens she's in recovery as well, and her drug of choice was the same as mine. That she was going through her assessment with me, right, like where I'm sitting down, just ask me questions, and she could see that I was so nervous, and I had all these tears just rolling down my face because of the anxiety. That she stopped. She stopped working for a second, and she just held me, dude, for the longest time. She said, "Charlie, you're in a safe place here. You don't have to worry. You're amongst people here that everyone is going to be treating you with kindness because it looks like you're a kind man, and that's what you'll get in return." And those two, Chase and Nurse Cass, started the I guess you'd say my road or the platform for me to immediately be comfortable where I was. And they put me in the detox wing, but technically for methamphetamine, supposedly, you know, after 3 or 4 days, it's out of your system. That while you're in detox, in that detox wing, you're not required to go to groups yet because some folks are there off of other things that it is medically necessary for them to have certain medicines so they don't die, literally die. Methamphetamine, there is no antidote for. There's none. There's none. It sucks. It fucking sucks. You have to just go through with it. And that was on Saturday, November the 16th, when I got in. And that next morning, and I know him now, great guy, still see him often. He's in housing. His name's Mike Cooperwood, great fella. He was walking past my doorway, and he had like a little tote with him, like he was going somewhere. And I said, hey, buddy, can I follow you and go into one of these groups? I don't want to waste my fucking time because I'm awake, right? You know? He goes, follow me. I said, okay. The first group he took me into, remember I just told you about Emily? It was one of her groups. And when I went in, I said, ma'am, I don't know if I'm allowed in here, if this is my group or not, but I just wanted to do something because I'm in detox. She said, you're welcome. Sit down, no problem. And that made me feel real good. I mean, she was a real chill environment. There was maybe 20 of us in there at the most. You know, she's sitting there with her legs kind of crossed. And I mean, it was just people sitting down bullshitting like you and I are. And that lesson for the day was mind traps, the different things that we tell ourselves that are negative, you know. And I still have the sheet on it, actually. But from that day, I thought I ain't waiting until I get out of detox, which was like 6 days later. I thought I'm going to these meetings as long as I'm awake and feeling enough energy, I'm going, man, because I wanted to start to get well. Now, going back to your original question, the reason I just said all that is because there were some folks that would be in the detox wing, say 7 to 10 days, man. I mean, if their body was that needed that kind of care, you know, because that's a pretty intense level of care. You get checked on 4 times a day by the nurses, vitals, and all that shit. I mean, you're on a strict medicine regiment, you know, and not required to go to groups. And there were some that once they got out of detox and they got into the residential wing, who would have the attitude of, I ain't going to this fucking meeting. No, I ain't going to that. Oh, yeah, I've got plenty of time, you know. There was that attitude, or there was also other attitudes like, I don't fucking belong here. I ain't supposed to be here. I'm only here because the court wants me here. Fuck this place, punching walls, right? Not me. I told my caseworker when I met him, Bald Josh, good dude. He asked me, he says, how long are you here for? Do you know, with insurance? I said, not just yet. Come to find out. And he said it was the first time for him. And he's been at Sauna Lake for 5 years since they opened. They opened in 2020. He said, Charlie, I want you to see something. He brought me into his office. I had been there a few days, I guess. And he says, look at my computer. And he was showing me my whatever on his computer. And he said, you see this? These are the days requested. He goes, for the VA, they normally go in 7-day increments. He said, the most I've seen them ever give someone right off the bat is like 28 days. He said, look at this. And he panned his finger over. He said, they're giving you 45 days from the get-go. I said, is that good? He goes, yeah. He said, that means that you can stay here for sure for 45 days because they think you need it. And I was so happy, man, because I told him, I said, Josh, I don't care if it's 3 days, 3 weeks, or 3 months from now. I don't want to leave until I feel better. I don't want to put a time on my recovery. I don't want someone to say, oh, my 30 days is up, I'm ready. Or the insurance to say, oh, you only have 28 days, you should be well by now. You know, everybody's recovery from substance abuse is going to be different, man. Everyone is individually a different person. And so I told him, I said, I don't want to leave them gates until I feel better. And he says, wow. He goes, that's a great attitude, you know? And I didn't know, but I told him, I said, man, I've been suffering for so long. I need this. I don't want to leave it at all now that I'm here because I feel safe here. And so I went to all my classes. I went to all my required groups, as they say. But when I got there, Tim, to give you an idea of my physical condition, they gave me a walker with the tennis balls on for the first 4 or 5 days. I needed it, man, because I wasn't stable. When I stopped using it, I was walking on my own, but I was wall walking, you know, keeping myself braced at all times and moving at a fucking snail's pace, buddy. I wasn't moving fast because I couldn't. It hurt too bad on my insides and my torso. And what I found was there were a lot of good people there. Once again, they were just compassionate. You know, they would help me in ways maybe that others were able to that I wasn't, like the younger cats, like setting up chairs or whatever. I'm not going to say that they catered to me, but they had a lot of respect. And so my recovery journey in there was one with an attitude of, I'm grateful to be there. I was glad to be there. I didn't want to be anywhere else. And maybe it's because we all do have different experiences through our life, and maybe it's because I'm a little older. But I'll give you an example of some folks that I heard, just keeping my ears open, of lack of gratitude is what I'm going to call it. They'd say like, "Oh man, all we have is chicken every day. Chicken, 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 chicken," you know. And I'm not going to lie, Tim, they did serve chicken a lot. But here's the deal. Instead of looking at it that way, all we have is chicken. I'm saying to myself, I got 3 nourishing meals a day, man. Sure, they got chicken. They got a full salad bar with different, lettuces and all the vegetables a guy want, that a guy wants. They got snacks in the evening. They have snacks any time of day over where the microwave and shit were in the cafeteria area. There were always Planters nuts over there, granola bars from Nature Valley, cereals and oatmeals for any time of the day or night. I'm grateful. I ain't gonna bitch about this. I mean, and the staff, the kitchen staff, the head main shit stain, John, the kitchen cook, he's in recovery. He wanted to be there, like Thanksgiving. Man, put out a beautiful spread, right? And I walked up to him, and he was kind of, dirty with his, been sweating because he'd been working hard. I walked up to the back of the kitchen. I just said, "John," and I gave him a big hug. I said, "Thank you so much, man, for being here for us and providing this great meal." And he said, "Man, I'm grateful to be here because I'm just like you." I said, "You're in recovery?" He goes, "Yeah." He says, "Me doing this helps my recovery. Of course, I'm getting paid." He says, "But I knew once I went through here, I wanted to work here." That speaks volumes, dude. That's someone that wanted to be there to help us. So for the naysayers that would say, "Oh, this sucks or that sucks or whatever," let me tell you, go without eating for a while. Live in your car or live on the streets for a while. Don't have a warm bed and a roof over your head for a while, and you might appreciate this fucking shit we're getting. To me, that's lack of gratitude, and that's immaturity to me, man. You know, if you're going to bitch, let's not think about it as bitching. Let's say, okay, I've got a problem. Is it something that you can control? If it is, let's find a solution. If it's not in your control, let it go, man. You can't control it. Just be at peace with it and try to be grateful for what you fucking have. And that was my attitude. And there were twice that I can remember that I guess you'd say my level of being irritated was enough, which I don't get irritated anymore. I mean, I got patience, is what I'm getting at. But there were twice that I felt like I needed to speak up about something. One of them was in the chow line. That there was a guy behind me, and I mean, the line is like 30, 40 people long. And he started commenting as we're bullshitting about the guy serving the food. Oh man, he goes, "This guy's a dipshit, he's a dumbass." And I didn't say nothing at first, but then he kept bitching. And I remember him asking me, "How many days are you going to be here?" I said, "Actually, I'm almost up on my 45 that the VA has given me, but I've asked for an extension." He goes, "Why?" And I said, "Why not? I'm not ready to go yet, man. I still need some help here." And I said, "I'm gonna tell you another thing. I'm a gentleman and I'm kind. But I said, if you're gonna spread negativity and talk about the man that's serving food or whatever in a negative light, please don't do it around me. Because I don't need that, man. I like to be grateful for the things that I have in life. And right now, this is a gift for me being here." That was once. The other time was close to when I was almost getting out. Sat down at a cafeteria table with another member who was getting out soon. And all he was talking about, sitting right next to my left, was about the bill that his wife had received, that she communicated to him about the price of being there, and oh, how they're just out for money here, and blah 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 blah. Right? I won't say his name, but I just said to him, I said, "Hey, buddy," because I mean, I respected this guy, I loved him, even though he was bitching. I said, I said, do me a favor, please, and don't spread negativity, man. Not while I'm here. I said, because that does nothing for my positive energy that I'm trying to create. So if you're going to say these things, either please wait until I'm gone or ask me to leave. I'll go to a different table. But please don't be that negative around me, man. Because Tim, while I was there, the whole time, I needed to work on what's between the ears and my attitude towards life, towards death, towards a lot of things. I was trying to get a different perspective of life because I had been to hell, living in the fucking gutter, and had given up hope. That for me, this was a gift, man. I thought anyone that would bitch about being here is not someone who's wanting to get well. There's someone who is here because they have to be, or as soon as they get out, they're going to start using again. They have no intention of quitting. You cannot force someone to want to quit, Tim. You just can't. Now, I'm not going to say that there aren't cases where the legal system will put someone in there, say, for example, that if they don't follow these steps, they won't get their children back, that they do turn their attitudes around and they become successful. I think that that's great. Even though it started in something of a process that they didn't like, they opened up their mind, right? But if you don't open up your mind and you aren't willing to take suggestions and you aren't willing to make a change, nothing's going to change and you're just going to be fucking miserable. And that was my whole goal of being there, was to change what was in between my ears. And Tim, there were like a few, not many. There were a few little cliques that happened, you know, where 3 or 4 people always hung out, you know. But for the most part, I treated everyone under that roof with the same kindness and respect that I want, which is, as soon as I saw a new member come in through the doors, sick and all, their worst day of their life maybe, I'd go up and hug them and just say, welcome to Sauna Lake, man. I love this place so far. You're in a good place. And I would say that to each and every member. And I would hug each and every member every day that I saw them, right? That on the day that I did my commencement, and I wasn't doing it to be a show off. I was doing it because I was so grateful for the people in that room. Was I sat up in the front with 2 other fellows that were commencing with me, and they had said their thing, I guess, and it came to my turn, that I looked at my right and I just started naming everyone at the tables in that room, everybody's first name. And then I got to one gal sitting by one of the exit doors that I didn't. I said, honey, you must have slipped in on me. I don't know your name yet. She says, I just got here last night. My name's Laura. I said, okay, nice to meet you too. But I named off everyone in that room. There were probably 70, 75 folks in there. That I told them all, I said, the reason I just said your name is because each and every one of you, in some form or fashion, has helped me in my recovery. Just by giving me a hug, by giving back. That helps me. That fuels me to want to get better. And so I didn't go to any cliques. I formed a few bonds for sure, you know, with special people that were like-minded, I guess. But I treated everyone the same, man, because we were all in there to try to get better. And for the people that would bitch or say be standoffish or a chip on their shoulder, like, oh, I don't need this, I would love them even more. Because that's the only, you cannot take hate plus hate and equal anything but evil, dude. I think that the only thing I could hope was each time I hugged one of them fellas or gals that were being defiant, was that maybe some of my energy would spread into them. And that's all I would do is love them, even if they are pissed off or crying and frustrated and angry, love them. That's been Chuckology throughout my recovery and in housing and here in outpatient. I know everyone's name because that's important to me. They might think it's impressive that I know all their names. Man, Charlie knows everybody's name. Charlie knows everybody. I'm not doing it to impress anyone. I'm doing it because when I meet someone, I don't shake their hand. I hug them, and then I tell them I'm so glad to meet them, and I'm so glad that they're in Sauna Lake with me. And that's how I get to know them. And so that's important for me, is that connection. And that's how I went through inpatient. I was forward thinking, positive, open, and willing and honest. As long as I do those three things, how? Honesty, open mindedness, and willingness, I figure I'll be okay. Because there's a lot of things I'm not okay with still, and I know that, and I'm self aware of it. Those are things I'm working on. I don't want to say anymore that those are my weaknesses. I used to say that. That's kind of a negative connotation towards myself. I don't like that language, man. Instead of saying, oh, I'm weak here, because I did that for a long time. I called myself a piece of shit, or said, oh, this is one of my weak, traits. Now I just say, yeah, I got some good strengths. I think I'm a very honest person with a lot of integrity, but there's some things I need to work on. Instead of saying that's a weakness. So I'm still every day, every hour, every minute of the day, I just think, how can I be a better person today than I was yesterday? That's how I am doing my recovery and being inpatient. And I want to tell you something. I want to tell you something that I think you'll really get a kick out of and respect. The CEO of Sauna Lake is a person in long-term recovery himself. This guy had a life before he came into recovery that financially, I think, without saying too much, well off, let's just say. That in the last 21 years of him being clean, what he tells us at Sauna Lake, he would come by once a week and talk to us inpatient. What he would say every week was the same thing, but I didn't mind it. I figure I need that repetition. I need to hear things that are going to help me. And what he would say was this: the two ways that a person can maintain sobriety that you do every day. One is connection. You cannot isolate. You have to have connection with other people that are in recovery. That's one. The second thing is to give service. Giving service meaning doing something for someone else and not expecting a thing in return, just out of the kindness of your heart because you want to help someone, right? Well, he lives by that, and I'm going to tell you how. The end of my 45 days was coming up, and I was getting nervous, because I know that the VA referral process takes a while, right? And I hadn't heard nothing. I was trying not to sweat it, but it's kind of hard not to sweat when you're sitting there wondering, man, am I going to get kicked out of here now because my 45 days is almost up and they don't have... My caseworker said, Charlie, let me check into a few things and I'll get back to you. I said, okay. He came back to me like 2 days later, and this is what he said. He knocked on my door in my bedroom in private, and he said, I've been here since Paul opened this in 2020. And for someone who's really trying, that wants to work in their recovery, that's doing well, not a behavioral issue, and is a good guy like yourself, I have yet to see him put someone on the street without a place to go. So he said, you can stay. we're going to have to move you up to Hilltop, which is that building I told you about a little bit ago. It's a separate building that's on the same premises though. That's called partial PHP, to where it's a lower level of care, less expensive, I guess. That he says, we're going to have to move you up there for cost reasons. He said, but you can stay. And to this day, I was there. I was clean 72 days on the day I left. I was there for 68. From that 45th day to that 68th day, someone was helping me. And I think in my heart, that's because CEO of this company cares. And that's his way of giving back to folks, because when you think about the amount that staff is getting paid, nurses are getting paid, psychiatrists are getting paid, the cost for the food, for the cooks, for everything, the lights, the utilities, the gas. Someone's paying for that shit, man. And for him to let me stay there was a gift for me. And I'll tell you another thing about how he walks the walk. He doesn't just talk it, he does it. Is I am in sober living, that as long as I'm doing outpatient 5 days a week in this facility, this outpatient facility, he waives my housing fee. Because that's $195 a week that I don't have right now. I'm unemployed, man. And I've still got my house payment to make. So there's some folks that bitch about the housing and bitch about, I say, man, I tell him every time I see him and I hug him and I just say, I'm so grateful for you, man. Thank you for helping me. Because someone's paying that rent for all them fucking utility bills and the water bill and the sewer bill and all that. And as long as I'm coming here 5 days a week to get better, he's paying for that. That's huge, dude. That is a huge service that he's doing for people that I don't think they understand sometimes when they say, oh, the company's just out for money. Well, he's a businessman. I mean, sure, he's got to make some money to get a profit. But on the other hand, he's in recovery. And what he wants, he says this all the time, and it's not just lip service. He wants everyone to get to long-term sobriety, which within the industry, technically, that's 1 year of continuous clean and sober. They consider long-term sobriety. That there's so many things that he promotes and pays for at this facility that cost members nothing. Every Saturday, we have a party here, right? Every Saturday, or they'll have it somewhere else, ice skating rink, bowling alley, whatever. For a couple hours of fellowship, the food is paid for, and transportation to and from for the people in housing that don't have a vehicle like I do, pays for that. That he don't expect anything back except to see people get long-term recovery. Dude, that's a gift, man. And so I'm just forever grateful for Sauna Lake. I really am. And there's a reason why they have 4.5, 4.8 stars out of 5, because they really care, man. They're not just talking and flapping their damn gums. They're doing the action, man. They are really helping people that want to be helped. And that's how my recovery journey has been. And I'm just so grateful I didn't have to leave after the first 45 days. As a matter of fact, Timmy, when I did leave on the 68th day, it was because there was a definite agreement between myself and the nursing and doc staff in the country. Was I needed to get closer to the VA hospital to start getting things checked out physically. And they have a sober living house. The one I'm in, it's like 7 minutes to the VA hospital. Dude, that is so convenient for me. And that's the only reason I left inpatient. Really, I enjoyed it down there. I would have stayed there. But I know I got to get well fit physically. And so they've been doing some screenings on me and some x-rays. I got an MRI coming up that I hope it's negative. Because if it is, then I'm going to get physical therapy to where I could start getting back in something that resembles shape, I guess. But right now I'm afraid to, because if I do anything strenuous, like lift anything, climbing stairs, I got to pace myself. And you know how they say, like, listen to your body type of thing, Right now, my body says that my chest starts throbbing. Boom, 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 boom. I get these sharp pains right underneath my left titty, inside my chest. And what follows, and it's a dull one, it's not sharp all the time, but I get this headache that runs up the left side of my neck and goes right behind my fucking left eyeball. That if I just need to take Excedrin the rest of my life and begin some physical therapy, I'll be happy. But until they find out for sure, that's why I'm not pushing anything. And what's the word? I'm not going to get any, I'm doing everything I can to avoid pain for right now, because I want to be able to be physical again, Tim. I used to walk 2 miles a day, do 60 sit-ups, 60 push-ups, 8-count bodybuilders while I was on the vessel. I was in shape. I mean, I wasn't always like muscle bound. I never lifted weights, but I was able to endure, man. Now, if I pick up, like, say, a case of water, like one of them 24 packs, oh man, it hurts under my rib cages to where I can walk with it, but I got to be real slow. If I go at a normal pace that my brain wants me to go, I peter out so easy, and I get in so much pain that my arm, this left arm, gives out. So that's what they're working on finding out right now. They did an x-ray and they said my bones and stuff are normal wear and tear for a guy who's almost 50, but they said that I have a tortuous aorta. I had to look that up, but basically out of the left side of a person's heart comes your aorta, it kind of loops up and then goes straight down. And then that vessel provides blood to the rest of your system. That mine has a kink and like a bulge in it that puts me at a higher risk, I guess, for an aneurysm or dissection. But the x-ray doesn't always show that much detail. That's why they're going to do an MRI of that in my left shoulder. My right arm, I can move around all day, do okay with. A little pain, not much. But my left arm, about 6 weeks ago, I was already in housing. That my left arm, it was gradual. It got to where I can only go back this far. And to go back any further than that hurts like a son of a bitch. And if I try to stretch out like I did at the donut shop the other day to drive through, if I try to stretch my arm out of my car door to get like exchange money, normally you kind of lean on your door a little bit and give her a stretch. If I do that, I didn't know it until then, I squealed fair and square. There was a gal taking my car because I didn't know that would happen. So there's something going on in here. I don't know if it's muscle or joint or bone or what the fuck, but I want to get those things checked out before I start pushing myself to get better physically. But I need to get better physically because the way things are right now, even if I wanted to go back to my house, that would be kind of a dumb move by myself, man, because I can't keep up with the normal, everyday things that a person has to do for that size of a place. I just can't. I peter out too easy. and or I get in so much pain under my damn rib cages. So my recovery right now is about as strong as it can be, but I'm also very self-aware that I've got a long way to go, buddy. I still have nightmares. Like the other night, I woke up because my foot kicked the fucking wall where there's windows. Luckily, it was the wood, not the window, because I broke the goddamn blinds. Last week, I had a nightmare that I woke up because I had punched the wall. I wish it would have been the drywall, although I might have dented it, but it hit right on the molding, man, on a piece of wood. It's like, fuck. So I get up like 2, 3, 4 times a night, and I'm very comfortable in the rooms of recovery. I've already went back twice to where I was inpatient in Sauna Lake's inpatient place in the country and spoke. Man, what an honor. But when I first did it, there was a gal there who knows it. She goes, Charlie, are you nervous? I said, hell no, sister. I'm comfortable in these rooms of my people. I feel safe here. And if I can say anything to just help one person out of these 60 or 70 people, that'll make me feel like I've done something good. I said, it's just whenever I get out in public amongst people who aren't recovery that I get nervous about. So when I'm in the rooms of recovery, Tim, I'm grateful and I'm glad I get right up to the podium and speak whatever, man, because I enjoy it. It helps me. Other people have said, man, you really help me, Charlie. You know that? And I don't know how I do that for them sometimes. But after you start hearing it enough, I started thinking, well, maybe I do. Because they say in recovery, you should do service work, you know? Service work can be anything to help out others in recovery. Like I said, folding up chairs or doing it. Physically, there's not a lot that I can do. But someone that made me feel really good that what I'm leaning into now was I got done with my talk at Sauna Lake. They gave me about 30 minutes, which I could fill up 3 or 4 hours, no problem. But they gave me 30 minutes. And when I got done, one of the staff members, he's got 6 years clean. He came to me and said, everyone was cleared out. He says, Charlie, he said, man, I never heard your story. He said, that's powerful. He goes, I know that physically you've said you can't do service work that makes you feel inadequate or bad. He goes, I think you have found your service work. I said, what's that? He said, anyone that can captivate an audience within the first 5 minutes and make them laugh and cry. He said, you got a gift, man, that you can help a lot of people with in recovery just from speaking. That can be your service work. So I took his word for it, and now I'm just volunteering to speak in any jail, treatment center, recovery room, whatever it might be that I can find, man, just to help other people if I can.
Well, you definitely had me getting choked up over here a few times, getting emotional. I can say, thank whatever higher power to which one may subscribe for Sona Lake and for Haley and Chase and Nurse Cass and
Right.
everything that's happened for you, man. And thank you as well for reaching out to me out of nowhere and saying, hey, I've got a story that might be a good one for your channel. It has been an absolute honor and privilege to get to know you and to provide you the platform to convey the story. And as I have told you,
I want you to know that I truly appreciate it, man, because like I said earlier, and now that I'm in recovery, but even when I was in addiction on your podcast, that if I can say anything that gets through to someone that's working and they're having a problem, I hope I can encourage or just touch one person that might be listening, because it's possible. And to keep doing a safety sensitive job under the influence, it's not a matter of question if, it's just a matter of when you're going to get caught. And hopefully it's just from a random piss test and not some sort of accident where someone gets injured, because not only will that be of federal prison time, but that'll also weigh on a guy's mind that he hurt someone under the influence. Because I wouldn't be able to live myself had I known that during my active addiction, that's another reason I stopped driving, Tim. When I did, was because I knew, even though I wasn't drinking alcohol, I was intoxicated. My judgment was off. My precision and my hand-to-eye coordination became off. I still right now have problems with certain parts of, I guess it's my certs. I don't know what the fuck it is, but I know that I'm not the same guy I used to be. I'm not as quick, I'm not as sharp, but being, at least now, if I were to have an accident, let's say, cop pulls me over, no problem. I'm clean, buddy. I got insurance, I got a license, I'm buckled up. I'll say yes, sir, no, sir, and go on about my day. If I were under the influence and if I would have accidentally like backed into a kid or something at a gas station or something, and I was using, how do you deal with that kind of shit is beyond me. I wouldn't be able to live with myself, would you?
No, sir. No, I
Yeah.
could not.
And man, I want to give a shout out to you and to a couple people that have been reaching out, and I haven't responded. That I just want them to know that I'm so busy and not able lately with privacy things and being in housing that I want to reach back out, but it's just going to take some time. And of course, that's Captain David Brains, Captain Brian Hamilton, and Captain Tim Bones, another one. That these people have reached out in some form or fashion, and I just haven't gotten back to them. But I'm grateful for them for one reason mainly, and that's because when I became addicted, they didn't abandon me. They accepted me where I was and encouraged me, but still accepted me even though I was using, where other people cut me out of their life completely just because I was addicted. That's wrong, man. That is, I mean, maybe you'll hear a Bible thumper or someone else say that, no, if someone's doped up, then they deserve this. But to me, that's the extreme radical that people are people, man. And when someone gets sick, like for example, cancer, let's say if the doctor told you, Tim, that Tim, you've got this cancer, but if you come in for 25 treatments and you do this, there might be a success of you recovering, you would do it. You know, people are afraid to come into recovery from mental reasons or substance abuse because either A, they'll be labeled, or B, they get into it and they're like, this is okay. I'm good. I'm well now after 3 months or something. And not doing what the doctors and the medical staff suggest. It's just like cancer for diabetes, cancer, and all that other bullshit. You're not going to get well, man. And that's my perspective of it at this point in my life, that I used to be so judgmental towards someone that was homeless. I can remember telling my son when he was small, I said, oh, Charlie, that guy's just a bum. That gal, she's on the street because she wants to be. She's just a dumbass. And other veterans that I heard had PTSD and stuff, I always thought it was fake. I really did. Because I hadn't heard of that before. I was like, that's just somebody wanting something for nothing. Why don't they're just weak-minded. Why don't they toughen up and just suck it in and look at it that you're a man type of thing? Until it happened to me. Once it started happening to me, it made me realize how judgmental I had been. And because of that, I'm grateful for my addiction now. I'm grateful that I've been to hell and I'm coming back, because it makes me look at people in a much different light, dude. If there's someone homeless now, I'm not going to criticize or judge them at all. I'll give them a hand to help them up, as best I can. If I see another veteran who seems off their rocker because of so much that they've seen, say, from combat or something over in the Middle East, my heart goes out to them, man, because they are suffering as well. They're not faking it. It's a real fucking thing. And I think because of that, my addiction has made me better, if that's even possible. I think I'm grateful for my addiction anyway. I'm grateful for my sobriety right now, but I'm grateful to have gone through that to make me see I was mistreating people by judging them. That's not fair, man. No one should judge anyone unless it's some universal power that some people call God. Sure, let them judge, but no one here on earth. No one's better than anybody else, man. Right here on the surface, what are we here for? Sometimes, 50 to 100 years, if you're lucky, 100 years, whatever. That's it. If there is some place that's eternal and forever in a different realm, it's all going to be the same one. Some people say Allah, some people say God, or whatever that might be. People still wait on a Messiah. That we're all going to go to the same place if there is a place. So get along, and not judge each other whenever you have a disability about something. I quit smoking, Timmy.
You gave up cigarettes?
I did. I vape, and I use these jobbers, these little nicotine pouches. They're not tobacco, but there's nicotine in them just because cigarette smoke. I never did like the smell of it. And I want my mustache and my hands and stuff to smell clean. That way, if I get around the ladies, they're not afraid to get closer. You know what I mean? But I am still on nicotine. I still vape and I use these. And I don't think any of it is very healthy, but I do believe it's harm reduction, because tobacco, not nicotine, is what causes carcinogenics into your lungs and whatnot. So
that's great to hear, bud. I wasn't aware of that. Couple of questions left, bud. I don't know if you have time beyond another half hour or so, or if we'll even get that far.
There's no one here that's kicked me out yet, and the front doors say Sundays open from, I think it says 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'll have to double check. It could be 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., but either way, I'm good, man.
Okay. Well, you mentioned, of course, the speaking engagements. There was a quote I found on Facebook that I read through, and I kind of got choked up and copied and sent it right over to you. Did you end up opening that speech with that Hemingway deal that I sent you?
Oh, no, I did not on that day, because I was told I only had 30 minutes, but that is something I've got starred on my thing. That's like saving it, that I don't want erased, because I do want to share that. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm gonna be honest, my memory is about as long as my Peter. It's about like that. So I'm glad that you said something so that I can do that, man. Yeah, I'll read it. Matter of fact, I'll read it tomorrow, because tomorrow I have outpatient, and then in the evening I'm going to a wake for a guy that I met in recovery. He passed 7 days ago, and he was really good to me and very respectful, and gave me the best compliment that I've ever had yet in my recovery. And he died, and this will be my first time dealing with death free from substances, and it stings. But I know I need to let it sting, because all the drugs and alcohol would do is just push it down and numb it. I need to feel it, man. But it's my first time experiencing someone that I care about losing their life while I'm not addicted, and it's kind of tough. But I'll say that tomorrow morning to our group to give them some positive energy, man.
Well, if I may read it for the sake of this podcast episode.
Please do.
I do want to hear more about the speaking engagements you've done. And you mentioned too, another recommendation somebody gave you that I'll mention after. But that quote that I sent you that morning
Sorry, go ahead.
was Ernest Hemingway once said, "In our darkest moments, we don't need solutions or advice. What we yearn for is simply human connection, a quiet presence, a gentle touch. These small gestures are the anchors that hold us steady when life feels like too much. Please don't try to fix me. Don't take on my pain or push away my shadows. Just sit beside me as I work through my own inner storms. Be the steady hand I can reach for as I find my way. My pain is mine to carry, my battle's mine to face, but your presence reminds me I'm not alone in this vast, sometimes frightening world. It's a quiet reminder that I am worthy of love even when I feel broken. So, in those dark hours when I lose my way, will you just be here? Not as a rescuer, but as a companion. Hold my hand until the dawn arrives, helping me remember my strength. Your silent support is the most precious gift you can give. It's a love that helps me remember who I am, even when I forget." Now, in our first series of meetings, especially, what's that?
That's powerful.
Yeah, I got choked up when I read it that morning, and when you said you'd use it in your speech. You told me something similar along the way in our own episodes when you were thanking me for sort of providing that for you. Um, I'm glad I did.
I am too, man, because sometimes, and it's not my imagination, some people say, oh, it's just because, you were using, or, I understand where I might have some cognitive dysfunction and some ailments now, whatever, that were exasperated by methamphetamine. But as the fog lifts and clears, I don't recall mistreating anyone except for me. I was hurting myself. That some who thought they were helping me, they tried, I guess, that when I wasn't where they wanted me to be in my recovery because I wasn't ready yet, kind of gave up, moved on. Oh, you don't really want recovery. You don't want to get better because if you did, then you'd be in a center right now. That type of attitude. That what do they know what I've been doing? How do they know that at 2 a.m. that I've been searching online trying to find a place that the VA will approve, or a loophole that I can find to get the help that I need? And you've never done that, man. And I don't know, I guess part of it is maybe the distance between Baton Rouge and Missouri area, that I figure that's one thing. The other, you don't have a dime in this. I mean, you wouldn't gain or lose anything either way from trying to persuade me, that you haven't done that. You've accepted me right where I've been. And because of that, you've been, I guess, a constant, trustworthy source that I could rely on to not embellish nor, make anything lighter, just to take it as it is. And that's why I love you, dude, because you've provided that for me, and like I say, when sometimes here it was, you were a complete stranger a year, 15, 18 months ago, that now some of the people that I was closest to in my life, physically and, bloodline, because I wasn't where they wanted me to be, that they abandoned me. And I figure at this point, as the fog clears and lifts, that, and maybe this is negative, I shouldn't be putting this kind of energy out, but I figure they weren't there for me, really there, and trying to help me during my addiction, and they're not here helping me now in my recovery. That's how I feel. Fuck them, because they didn't accept me for who I was and for where I'm at now. And to me, that's not love, dude. Love is accepting someone and being there for them. Like, for example, if I would have had diabetes or cancer, I think maybe some of my family would have stayed around a little longer, because it was a physical thing that I couldn't help. Well, what they don't know is my addiction is something else I'm finding out I couldn't help. Once you become addicted, you don't have a choice, man. Your brain literally changes, it rewires. You don't have a choice. Now, in recovery, you do have a choice. I got a choice right now not to use today, and that's the one I'm picking. But in active addiction, when you're so far out of control and you're not in control, that chemical inanimate object is, you really don't have a choice, because your body and your mind looks at that as that's survival. Fuck food, fuck water, fuck shelter. You need that drug that bad in order to survive physically and mentally, that it's not a choice. So for the people that left me or choose not to be around or talk to me just because I was an active addiction, they can call me all they want. Fuck them. I don't want anything to do with them right now. I might in the future. I am open-minded, but I'm not ready yet. It's too early in my recovery to even think about trying to put together a bridge that was burned long ago. And so that's why I thank you, man, for accepting me and not only just listening to my story, but and putting it on the air, but the times we've talked on the phone, because you care, because you were checking on me, not as a podcaster, as a person. That means a lot, dude. It really does, because like the CEO says, that is caring about someone and doing something because you want to without expecting anything in return, you know? And I see that in you, Tim. Maybe you may not, but I'm learning about myself that I still have tunnel vision all the time, it seems like, but I'm trying to open it up to a broader spectrum, that I'm learning in this addiction that when people tell me certain things, or I'm sorry, in this recovery, that when people tell me things, at first I would kind of blow them off like, oh, Charlie, you'd be a good speaker. You got a radio voice. Or Charlie, you'd be good at speaking for this. Or man, I think you'd be a good teacher. I think you'd be a good lecturer. At the first couple times, I thought, man, it's just someone blowing smoke up my ass. But they get to telling me that enough, opening up my mind a little and trying to see the bigger picture. Maybe that is so. And I would say that for you, buddy, that you're a great guy. You're a genuine guy. Although we've not met face to face, we don't need to for me to know your character. And I'm not the best judge of character. I mean, you can ask one of my 3 ex-wives, but I think the older we get, the better we become at things. That you're a solid dude, man. And I appreciate you checking on me when no one else was. And there's, like I say, there's a few out there that have reached out that I so badly want to, like Miss Margie, my old grocery gal. She's reached, I haven't even read her texts yet or even listened to the voicemails yet. And that makes me feel bad, but I just haven't had the time or the resource or the privacy. Living in an apartment with 3 other dudes, there's always someone wanting to watch TV, always someone else on their phone. I have a phone that if it's not on speaker, I can't hear because it's so old, and I guess the goddamn inner speaker thing doesn't work anymore. That those things for right now, I say, okay, that bothers me, right? But I can't control, or I don't want to. I got to weigh out the priorities and say, housing is something that I need. This sober house, I need it. And if that means right now I don't have the privacy that I once had in my own house, I'm willing to sacrifice that, because this is what I need for me to get better. I mean, recovery, you do have to make connections, but you also have to be selfish to a point. I'm learning this now because I'm working on myself for the first time in my fucking life. I'm almost 50, dude. I'll be 50 next year. I'm thinking, fuck, I've never really taken time for me. I've taken time, and I'm grateful that I've raised a great guy. Charlie's an awesome fella, and mentally stable, and all of those things. I couldn't be prouder. But that was for like 18 years, roughly 17. My mom, my old man, my brothers, in some sense, that I had always helped out first and took away time from me. And what that did, burnt the candle at both ends, buddy. You know, and you get to a point where you're like, fuck, I have nothing left. And what I do have now, if I don't give it to me, I won't be able to do anything for anyone else, you know? I might be talking in circles now, but dude, there's so much shit I could tell you, man, that just, I'm just grateful for today and for this moment, because I'm learning about me that when I reflect on the past too much or start worrying about the future, I get overwhelmed. You know, I look at my future and say, like, for example, wow, I'm never even gonna like say whenever I get a grandchild that I can't have like a little toast of champagne with my son or a sip of whiskey just to celebrate. And I get to thinking about that. I don't even have a grandkid yet. You know, I'll worry about that when the time comes. When I look at this big, huge boulder out in front of me, way out on recovery, I get overwhelmed, man. And so I say, whoa, reel her back in, buddy. Reel her back in and take the old hammer and chisel and a little bit at a time, baby steps. And I know that sounds elementary, maybe, and then somewhat maybe immature, but that's what I have to do right now, because that's the only thing keeping me sober. And that's the most important thing for me right now, is just to stay clean and whatever I've got to do that. And so I have started to learn more about the moment in the present and accepting what is for what it is, you know. And although I'm not a religious nor spiritual man yet, I'm not spiritual just yet, that I'm open to it, is I've got to find inner peace. And for me to do that is just one day at a time. You know, if I, sure, you got to think about the future. You got to think about like certain bills or a schedule or whatever, this and that. That's normal shit. But to think about things for the life in the future in terms of not being able to drink or drug anymore, dude, I get too overwhelmed. I'm like, how do I get through this? And the only way I get through it is reeling back to the present moment, stepping outside, smelling the breeze, watching the leaves on the trees, closing my eyes and looking up towards the sun, letting it kiss my face. Those are the times that I begin to heal, you know, just accepting what is for what it is. And although I'm not spiritual, what I do when I get overwhelmed, I say the first part of the serenity prayer. You know, if I cannot control it, let it go. You know, if I get frustrated or irritated about something, I ask myself, is this something that I can fix? Is it a problem that I can find a solution for? Okay, if it is, great, let's find a solution. If not, you've got to let that shit go. It's like, I used to get so much road rage, and Sherry would be in the car, someone cut me off in traffic, and I'd beep on the horn, be like, fuck you, you know, hoping that they pull over just so I could whip the tar out of them, you know. That now, if someone decides to cut out in front of me at the last minute, I'm keeping my side of the street clean. Sure, going ahead. I ain't gonna let you ruin my day. You know, I figured, go on. I can't control that vehicle, that person driving that vehicle. I can't. I can only control myself and how I react in my vehicle, right? You know, if someone says something, say, negative or demeaning, I can't control them. I can only control the way that I react to that. And that is with love and kindness and honesty. And if they don't like it, that's fine. That's how they feel. They can leave. But that's how I got to live my life now for my own sanity. Because thinking that you can change someone in life, it'll fucking wear you down. It will exhaust you. It will take you places that rob you of your own spirituality, because you're sitting there trying to control someone else or trying to make them feel how you feel about a certain thing. And I did that for a long time. I didn't realize I was doing it, but I did. I would think, well, why can't everyone just keep their car clean? Why can't everyone just, keep their grass mowed this way, or pay their bills this way, and budget this way, and be honest in this way? That I used to, and I didn't know it, but I used to, I guess, have an underlying determination that I wasn't even aware of thinking that I'm so good at what I do, and my perfection is so strong that I really want to help this other person to feel the way that I do so they can better their life. But I've learned that I can't do that. I'm not perfect. And I can only control my own thoughts. And I know another thing, being a perfectionist for most of my life, I look back now and say, fuck, it ran me ragged, man. It will take away your fucking soul. I mean, when you get up at 6 a.m. and you don't go to bed until midnight because you want every stinking detail in your life to be a certain way, everything swept a certain way, it robs you of your soul, dude. And what I'm learning right now is progress, not perfection, just progress. I'll try to do something a little better every day, but I'm still a work in progress, and I'm not going to be perfect, and neither is the person next to me. And if you can't respect and appreciate their imperfections, then you have a problem. And that problem is right here between your own ears. But that's Chuckology. I didn't go to school or nothing for that. That's just the way I feel about things.
Well, a couple more things came to mind while you were talking. Please let your son know that I hopefully did not become a bother, hitting him up all those times
Oh,
when you were
yeah.
kind of out of touch.
As a matter of fact, he told me on a Saturday, he said, Dad, the podcaster got a hold of me or whatever. And he was just wanting to know if you mind that he spreads to the listeners that you're in recovery. I said, no, I don't mind at all. And he said, okay, I just want to check with you first, but that was it. That's all he asked. And he said that he thought you were a solid dude. I said, yeah, he is. Because I don't think he's watched any of these, but I'm not sure,
I'm not sure either, but I was hitting him up kind of persistently when you were kind of out of commission. And David Rains and I, back probably November, as you were processing in, or maybe even December, I called him one more. I texted him. He called me. He was on a boat somewhere. And he had the exact same memory. The last call he had with you, it was not good. And like the last call you and I had
Right.
that evening, we both didn't know what the hell. And in that regard, I know I shared this with you already, but for the sake of this episode, I'm not going to drop any names. You'll know who I'm talking about. But I got an email out of the blue from someone I didn't know at all,
Oh, right.
who thanked me, wanted to remain anonymous, and
Yeah,
as
we
maybe,
can keep it that way.
yeah.
Sure. Being the gal from my past. Yeah.
But she thanked me for providing you this platform, for giving you a voice, sharing your story. And oh, what was I going to say?
Yeah, she's a good gal.
Yeah,
Man.
there was a point to what the hell I'm thinking, but I lost it now.
That's okay.
Oh, that was it. She said, I found your podcast when I Googled Charlie's name, expecting to find an obituary.
Wow.
That knocked me on my ass, dude.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you something that I've been told by my family, by my dad and my mom, more than once, was, Charlie, you're not going to make it to 50. You won't make it to 50. You're not going to make it to 50. Well, I got another year and a half to go, or next year I'll be 50. That, I guess in a way I expected the same thing, especially when I gave up for that period. What I had given up on life, man. From July till November of last year, I had given up. It wasn't a matter of surrendering anymore. I thought, I'm fucked. I have no hope left. And that's a very dark place to be, man. That is, and I'll be honest, I have no reason to not tell the truth. And to me, uh, sometimes people lie by omission, by not giving the full truth. When I was inpatient, I wound up being put on one-on-one watch. But even then, I didn't complain. They felt it was necessary because of my state of mind, that I said, okay, hey, you don't, because at first it was mentioned, well, maybe we should get you out of here and take you to the hospital. I said, please don't. And I told a psychiatrist on staff in private, I just said, Doc, I want to tell you something. I'm a man of my word. I'm a man of integrity. I promise you, I will not hurt myself. But you send me away from here into a place where I'm not comfortable, that's going to put a wedge between me and ever coming back here again. I love this place. Please don't send me away. And he said, okay. He says, I'll see you in the morning. And the next morning, I saw him. He said, you are a man of your word. He says, I'll take you off one-on-ones and you can stay here. Because that's important for me, for people to trust me and to know that if I say something, I mean it. I'm not just lip service. I'll put it into action. Because a few things had been said out of context of why that happened, why they put me on one-on-one suicidal watch. But I didn't resist. I didn't give any reason, any kind of what's the word, frustration or anything. I was very calm. I said, why? And when they told me, I said, okay. And they said, it's for your own safety. Okay, fine. But when they mentioned taking me out of there, that was something that I really felt would have been detrimental for my recovery, not helpful, detrimental, because all I want is for people to be honest with me as well. I don't care if someone's got a bunch of fancy degrees and labeled a psychiatrist or a master at this or whatever. I want someone to be honest. I don't give a shit if you only made it to the 8th grade or you're 80 years old working on your 5th PhD. I don't give a shit. Just be upfront with me and tell me the truth, and I'll tell you the truth. That's important to me, because once someone lies to me, Tim, I'm done. Like last year, that doctor and that social worker. I don't know how much detail I went into the story, but anyway, to lie to me verbally, to tell me something that wasn't true, that was fabricated, and then to find out at the end was true, that they lied to me, I have no use for anymore. I could be dying in the middle of the street, and that doctor better not touch me, buddy, because I don't trust him. Once someone lies to me, I figure that is lack of integrity, man. you know. And going back to the person that reached out to you, I would just like to say that part of me still loves her for sure. Not in love, but loves her as a genuine human being and someone who really cared about me, that at that point in time, I was immature. I wasn't mature enough to really understand the depth of what she was giving me. I was clouded by other things. And because of that, I upset her and kind of treated her in a disrespectful way. And And I'm sorry for that. I am. And I hope that, I hope everything's going well with her in her life, man and kids, whatever, good job. I don't know, but I hope that life's treating her well because she's a good person. I've known her since I was 12. She was 16. Bow chicka wow wow. Mm.
Indeed. Let's keep talking. If I have any more questions after this one, we'll just keep on going. I've got time. You mentioned, of course, the speaking engagements, and another individual recommended that you try stand-up comedy. Tell me about the speaking engagements, and if you're considering pursuing a life on stage, because
Well,
that's a fascinating opportunity. I think you'd be awesome at it. I was imagining the other night in my head seeing you on one of those talent shows, as a stand-up. Anyway, what you got?
well, I'll tell you what happened was about 6 weeks ago, one of the facilitators in the outpatient facility, who's in recovery himself, great guy. He had done stand-up comedy in the past, that he recommended. Remember, I told you how we have like get together every Saturday. So every Saturday, it can be different. It might be like, say, a recovery related type of topic where it's more listening and getting involved in recovery, or it could be something such as stand-up comedy or an individual telling their entire story, or bowling, or whatever it might be, that he says, we're going to try a comedy night. And I said, wow, yeah, it'd be all right. He goes, I think that you'd fit right in. And I said, you think so? He goes, yeah. He says, 10, 15 minutes or something. I said, okay. I said, I've never done it, but I'll give it a whirl. And that's where I was at that point. Sure, I can do this. I mean, I had a month, you know. But what happened in that month between fatigue, taxes, VA appointments, you name it? About a week before the comedy night, I hadn't had anything written, but more importantly, I was having some trouble between the ears, just some things. And so I didn't have his phone number, but I emailed him and I said, look, man, I want to give you ample time because I'm not someone who wants to have someone depending on me and me back out the last minute. I said, I'm not feeling it right now because I got a lot going on and I'm not feeling well mentally. So I hope it's not detrimental to your show, but I hope there's enough time to get someone else. Email back, no problem. When I went to go see that, I came on that next Monday to come to outpatient. He was facilitating, and that some bitch, he's a great guy. He goes, well, hey, he goes, you're still going to come though, right? I said, yeah, I'll be there to support you and, anyone else. It was okay. He says, well, maybe you can introduce me, and just kind of announce me. And I said, okay. I said, because, man, I said, just to talk to a crowd for 2 or 3 minutes, shooting from the hip without anything memorized or any kind of, skit written down. I said, I can do that. But I said, I don't want to follow you or some other professional. I said, if you put me up there first, I said, I'll get the crowd kind of warmed up so you can come on in and do the action. He says, okay. So on that night, I was grateful to at least be a small part that they had it was nice too. They had a full stage that they had set up. Everyone in this room is in recovery, and he was more like the MC, I guess. He was like telling jokes, and then he would pause, and one of the people that had volunteered, like myself, would come up and do like a 5-minute thing. But I went up there first, and like I say, Tim, I just shot from the hip. I looked out over the crowd and just said what came to mind, and I did that for about 3 minutes, I was very comfortable. I wasn't nervous, but I also, um, I didn't really have much more to say than that because I've had a lot on my mind lately that wasn't very comedic, you know, unfortunately. But I'm flattered that you say that because there's a few folks in my daily group of men that we meet with in the mornings that have said that. Like, man, you're a funny son of a bitch, you know that? I say, well, I just kind of roll with it and whatever I feel I say. I don't really have, and now don't get me wrong, I can have a filter when I need to, you know, proper places, but other than that, I mean, especially in these rooms of recovery, if all you hear about is, you know, the downtimes and the times we were suffering and miserable, that's kind of depressing. So sometimes I like to throw in some humor to get us through all that, you know? And so whenever I get up on the podium or something, just amongst say 20 or 30 of us now during the day, I just say what's on my mind and shoot from the hip that way. Like a facilitator one day, the guy we were just starting group, and the guy that I was in inpatient with, um, named Aaron, great guy, Aaron G. Anyway, he walks in, and I always try to compliment someone every day. You know, I try to see something neat about them, and I'll tell them. You know, I think that helps me, right? And so I'll say, "Hey, buddy, man, what a nice clean grill you got. You know, if they got a good smile. Hey, buddy, nice shoes. You know, or whatever." And this dude, he came in and he's like, "Hey, good morning, Charlie." He gave me a big hug, you know, and he sat down and he was wearing this hat. It was a Ford hat. It was a sharp looking hat, you know. And I just said, "Man," I said, and by the way, while I'm saying this, the facilitator is getting ready to start group. I said, "Man, it's a sharp hat." I said, "That's nice." And he takes it off. He goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "And I got it at the resale shop, $10." I said, $10 for that? I said, "Man, that's like a sore wiener. You just can't beat it, you know." And when I said that, that's when the facilitator says, "You should do our comedy thing with us." And but stuff like that, I shoot from the hip on. I don't think about it. It just kind of comes out because those are things that I've said in the past that I do as like a comparison or something with, you know. But I mean, just little things like that. If people find it humorous, great. That's why I say them. But I also make sure that I don't say things in a certain setting that would either be offensive to folks uh, due to curse words or sexual content. You know, I know where and how I need to speak among certain people, and that's not putting on a mask. That's just having respect for others. You know, because in recovery, we did this one class one time that the facilitator asked in small group that she said, "I'd like for you to write down a list of masks that you wear at different times for different things, you know." A lot of people came up with a lot of different ones. You know, well, I wear this mask because at work I got to do this, or I wear this mask because of that. When it got to me, I, I told her, I said, "I'm just going to be honest with you." I said, and this is just my perspective for now. I said, "I don't wear a mask. Now, do I filter certain things at certain times out of respect for others? Sure. But I don't call that wearing a mask. That's just being respectful. To feel like I've got to be someone else in a certain setting, I wouldn't be comfortable doing that. I figure if someone can't accept me for the way that I am, they can sit and spin. You know, I don't want any part of it because if I can't be me, that's uncomfortable. So I understand where some people feel like they have to due to anxiety or certain things to fit in. Hey, buddy, I've been around the block long enough to know I don't need to fit in anywhere, you know, except for myself. If there's a group that accepts me, fine. But I'm not out for being in a group. You know, I am, I am who I am. I'm not going to try to be someone else just because society says that that's the norm. I'm not going to say folks don't need to conform to society at all. I mean, there are rules in place and laws for certain things. I mean, sure, not to murder and rape and all that ugly stuff. But when it comes to just being yourself in the work setting, or being yourself at home or being yourself in church or wherever you travel to, bars, wherever, concerts, be yourself, dude. I don't wear a mask. I'm Charlie. What you see is what you get. I'm not going to be a different uh, Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde tomorrow. I'm not going to be someone you got to walk on eggshells with one day and then comfortable with the next. I am who I am, you know. And so comedy, I think for me, is when you can step out in front of a crowd and just kind of, after a small introduction of good evening, everyone, just kind of look out and just shoot from the hip of what you feel. And what I felt that night was looking at all these young fellas, right up front, all these muscular 30-year-old guys in recovery that are in good health still got the jobs and everything. And what I said to the crowd was, I said, I see someone like that down at the Loop, which is a local place where a lot of people hang out. I said, I see a guy like that at the Loop. And as I'm driving by, they got a nice, pretty girl there, and the girl's all bouncy and her hair's all flowing, and, ooh, can I have your number? Then they see a guy like me and they say, sir, can I help you across the street? I said, that's not what I want. And that was what I saw when I looked out at the crowd was, all these good looking fellas. And I did that though, just as a comparison to say, I'm not there anymore, obviously, because I guess you'd say, I don't want to say hitting on, but blending in with people that are 25, 30 years younger than me, sometimes I think is something they are uncomfortable with, not me. That maybe they think, oh, this creepy old guy, he might, hey, once you get to know me, I'm kind. You're safe with me, trust me. I'm not out to use you, rape you, touch you if you don't want to be touched. I'm not that guy. Do I look mean and ugly? Sometimes, yeah. I get my beard down there and bald, and I'm wearing my PTSD shirt or something. They'll be like, oh wow, that guy must be tough. No, I'm pretty nice. You just got to give me a chance, So, and most of them in recovery are, they don't see that, and I'm glad for that, But I threw that out as a joke on that night, I mean, like, I don't have anything scripted. What am I going to say? I thought I'll go out there and see what I see in the crowd and say something.
Well, my friend, what's that?
I was going to say, I just heard a vacuum started. I guess they're doing some cleanup, but as long as you could still hear me. Yeah, man, you got any more questions?
No, I got you, but I was just going to say, man, I don't know anybody else like you. Very, very happy to see you on this end of things now. And I really do appreciate you letting me be a part of this journey.
Yeah, and man, I would like to do this anytime with you. And if there's someone that you'd ever like to add or a different topic or anything, anytime, just let me know, because I am grateful now to know, which by the way, the CEO I was telling you about, his wife allowed me to come do this here. She's her and the coordinator that I see daily, but she was very supportive of me doing this, and so I'm grateful. So the best days for me, obviously on the weekends, but anytime, man. I would love to be able to share my experience, strength, and hope with anyone that might be willing to listen.
Well, not just that. When you said that, that reminded me, and I don't know if I told you or not, but there are two individuals that have both been on the podcast that active towboaters for Ingram. One of which listens to everything I publish, has listened to all of our stuff. And when I told him you reached out and that we were going to record this, his response was unlike anything I've ever seen from him. Positive, awesomely positive, and appreciative. But they're both, again, towboaters. One's 10 and 5, and the other one, I think, is 28 and 28. So coordinating the time to have both of them available might be a little tough. But I'd
Have
love.
they done a podcast of that I can view and see one
Oh,
of these?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I'll send them to you. Colin Bush and Mike Beaver Burkhardt.
I know Beaver.
Yeah.
I rode a boat with him. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'd like to maybe get together and just let you all talk, and I'll shut the hell up. But that's we'll work that out as we go. It seems like you're pretty flexible on weekends, and that's when I'm available mostly. So we'll see what we can put together with that. I'm certainly happy to do that
Cool.
going forward.
Sounds good, Tim. Hey, I appreciate everything, and be careful. And if you can't be careful, be courteous.
Yes, sir. How about both?
Yeah.
Yeah, drive safe getting home, bud. We'll keep in touch. I'm glad to see everything going on and you turned it positive.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll start your own podcast one of these days.
Well, you never know. And I want to give a shout out to a friend of mine. The wake I'm going to tomorrow. His woman is a friend of mine, and her name's Liz, great gal. But she had, so I can't take credit for it, but she had a good podcast idea, and it was going to be called Addicts in the Attic. So
Okay.
she and his name's Jacob, who's being laid to rest. Her and Jacob thought of this podcast, and I thought, man, that's a groovy title, but I can't take credit for it. But it would be Addicts in the Attic, and like I say, I'm going to pay my respects to Jacob and his family tomorrow, because his dad, like my son, came every Saturday to treatment to see his son, and now he's gone. So, yeah. All right, buddy.
Well,
Take
look, I'm obviously terribly sorry to hear about that, but talk to her, not necessarily soon, but if y'all are interested in working on that podcast, I am more than happy to help.
Okay, I'll let her know. Yeah, because I'll see her tomorrow, and yeah, I'll see what she says. I'll bump the idea around. She's in recovery herself. Yeah, I
Just
sure will, man.
Yeah, let me know.
Thanks. I appreciate it, dude.
All right, brother. Have a good one. We'll be in touch.
You too. See ya.
This has been a production of Where You At Studios, LLC.